Warning: the case you're about to hear was recovered from the restricted British Museum archive. Its contents have never been authorised for public release. Proceed at your own discretion. The British Museum. Sub-Basement 3. Department of Anomalous Antiquities. My name is Dr. Nathaniel Ashcroft, Senior Archivist, Custodian of Restricted Collections. What you are about to hear has been recovered from sealed files, letters, journals, and testimonies once thought too disturbing for public record. Every statement you hear is drawn from Britain's forgotten centuries, the whispered history that hides between faith and fear. These are the National Occult Archives, filed, preserved, never closed. The following document was never intended for public release. Case File NOA 1547. Classification: Testimony of Witness. Date of Statement: 8th day of March, 1547. Location: St. Mary's Convent, Lincolnshire, England. Author: Sister Agnes Whitmore. Prioress. Testimony regarding the affliction of Sister Catherine I. Sister Agnes Whitmore, Prioress of St. Mary's Convent, do testify regarding the terrible affliction that has befallen Sister Catherine. She arrived at our convent in the autumn of last year, a quiet novice devoted to her prayers and duties. Everything changed on the night of the 5th of January. Sister Catherine was found in the chapel at dawn. She knelt before the altar, her head thrown back, her eyes rolled white. Words poured from her mouth in a language none of us spoke. Sister Margaret recognized it as Latin, but Sister Catherine knew no Latin. She had never been taught the sacred language. The words she spoke were dark prayers, twisted and wrong. She called upon names we dare not repeat. When we tried to lift her, she became rigid as stone. 3 of us could not move her from that spot. Her voice grew deeper, no longer her own. The candles in the chapel all extinguished at once. We fled and summoned Father Edmund from the village. He arrived at midday with holy water and scripture. Sister Catherine still knelt in the chapel. She had not moved in 7 hours. Father Edmund began the rites of exorcism. Sister Catherine laughed. It was not a woman's laugh. It was something ancient and cruel. She spoke in that deep voice, reciting scripture backwards. She named sins that Father Edmund had never confessed to anyone. He turned pale and stepped back from her. The cross he held burst into flames in his hands. He dropped it and ran from the chapel. We locked the chapel doors and called for the bishop. Sister Catherine remains inside. We hear her voice through the heavy oak, still speaking in that twisted Latin, still laughing in that terrible way. The bishop arrives tomorrow. We pray he can help her. But I fear what lives inside Sister Catherine now. It knows things no mortal should know. It speaks with a voice that makes the stones of our convent shake. At night, we hear scratching from within the locked chapel, as if something with claws moves about inside. Sister Catherine's screams come at midnight. Then the laughing returns. Then the Latin prayers corrupted and wrong. We have stopped sleeping. We huddle together in the dormitory, reciting our own prayers. But we can still hear her through the walls, that voice that is no longer hers. Sister Agnes Whitmore, Prioress St. Mary's Convent, Lincolnshire. 8th day of March, 1547. Archivist's note: Dr. Nathaniel Ashcroft. Convent records indicate Sister Catherine remained confined for 6 weeks before Bishop's intervention. No further documents detail outcome. Chapel was sealed and never reopened. Records cease after March 1547. End of file. Proceeding to next recovered document. Case file NOA1723K. Classification: Prison Warden's Record. Date of statement: 21st November 1723. Location: Newgate Prison, London, England. Author: Thomas Crowe, Senior Warden. Record of disturbances in Cell 17A. Thomas Crowe, Senior Warden of Newgate Prison. Do record the strange events concerning Cell 17. The cell has remained empty since the hanging of William Marsh 3 months past. Marsh was a counterfeiter, sentenced to death in August. He cursed the prison as they led him to the gallows. He swore he would never leave Newgate. His body was cut down and taken for burial. But something remains. The disturbances began 1 week after the execution. Guards reported hearing footsteps in Cell 17 during night rounds. Heavy footsteps, pacing back and forth. But the cell stood empty, door locked from outside. I dismissed it as nerves. These old walls play tricks on men's minds. Then the scratching began. Deep gouges appeared on the cell walls. Fresh marks, carved into the stone each night. We have no explanation for how they appear. The cell remains locked. No prisoner has been inside since Marsh's death. I examined the marks myself by lamplight. They form words, over and over, scratched into every surface. The same phrase repeated hundreds of times. Never leave, never leave, never leave. The handwriting matches Marsh's prison records. I assigned Guard Pemberton to watch the cell overnight. He was a steady man, not given to fancy. In the morning, we found him collapsed outside the cell door. His hair had turned white. He could not speak for 2 days. When his voice returned, he told us what he witnessed. At midnight, the scratching began. He watched through the viewing slot. The cell appeared empty in his lamplight, but the scratching grew louder. He saw the marks appearing on the wall before his eyes, carved by invisible hands. The footsteps began. Heavy boots walking the small cell, pacing, endlessly pacing. Then he heard breathing. Right against the other side of the door, something stood inches from his face. He saw no one through the slot, but he felt breath on his skin, cold as winter frost. Then a voice whispered, "Never leave." Pemberton ran. No guard will now approach Cell 17 after dark. I have ordered the cell permanently sealed, but we still hear the footsteps, every night at midnight, pacing back and forth, back and forth. The scratching continues. The marks appear on the outside of the sealed door now, always the same words, "Never leave." I believe William Marsh kept his promise. Thomas Crowe, Senior Warden, Newgate Prison, London, 21st November, 1723. Archivist's note: Dr. Nathaniel Ashcroft's cell, 17, was demolished during 1780 prison renovations. Workers reported unexplained tool breakages and persistent cold spots. 3 stonemasons refused to complete the work. The cell's foundation stones remain. End of file. Proceeding to next recovered document. Case file NOA1845. R. Classification: Hospital Matron's Journal Entry. Date of statement: 3rd February 1845. Location: St. Bartholomew's Hospital, London, England. Author: Matron Elizabeth Harrow. Private Journal, Ward C, 3rd floor. Elizabeth Harrow, Matron of St. Bartholomew's Hospital, do record events witnessed in Ward C. 23 years I have served in this hospital. I have seen death more times than I can count. but I have never seen what now walks Ward C. It began 4 weeks ago. A patient in bed 12 passed peacefully in the night. An elderly woman, name of Margaret Finch. She had been with us for a month, consumption having taken its toll. We followed all proper procedures for the deceased. The body was removed before dawn. The bed was stripped and cleaned. But Margaret Finch did not leave. The night nurse reported seeing her 3 days later, standing at the window, looking out at the street below. The same nightgown she died in, the same hollow expression. I did not believe it, until I saw her myself. I was making rounds at 2 in the morning. The ward was dark, all patients sleeping. I walked past bed 12. It remained empty, made up fresh and waiting. Then I saw her reflection in the window glass. Margaret Finch stood behind me. I turned. No one there. I looked back at the window. Her reflection remained. She stared at me with empty eyes. I stepped backward. Her reflection followed me, mirroring my movements. But when I turned to face her, I saw nothing. Only when I looked at the glass did she appear. I fled the ward. My heart has not stopped racing since. Now all the night nurses report the same. Margaret Finch appears in every reflective surface in Ward C windows, water pitchers, medicine bottles, even the polished brass of the bedsteads. She stands there, watching, always in her nightgown, always with that empty stare. Patients have begun to complain. They wake in the night and see her face reflected in the window, looking in at them from the glass. They ring for nurses, crying out in fear. We moved 3 patients to other wards. Their families demanded it, but Margaret remains. Last night, she appeared in 7 different windows simultaneously, the same figure, duplicated across the ward, all watching us with those hollow eyes. I have spoken with Dr. Fenwick. He dismisses it as mass hysteria, overworked nurses and sick minds creating phantoms. But I know what I have seen. Margaret Finch is trapped somehow, caught between the glass and the living world. She cannot leave Ward C. Or perhaps she does not know she should. I dread the night shifts now. Every reflective surface holds the possibility of her face. Staring out from the other side, waiting, watching, never leaving. Elizabeth Harrow, Matron St. Bartholomew's Hospital, London, 3rd February 1845. Archivist's note. Dr. Nathaniel Ashcroft, hospital records confirm Margaret Finch's death. February 1845. Ward C sightings, documented through 1847 before reports cease. Ward was renovated 1848. All original windows replaced. No explanation found for simultaneous appearances. End of file. Proceeding to next recovered document. Case file. NOA 1681P. Classification. Innkeeper's statement. Date of statement 14th September 1681. Location: The King's Head Inn, York, England. Author: Samuel Blackwood. Innkeeper. Statement regarding the woman in room 7. I, Samuel Blackwood, keeper of the King's Head Inn, do give statement regarding the disturbances in room 7. My family has run this inn for 3 generations. We pride ourselves on cleanliness and good order. But room 7 has become a problem we cannot solve. The trouble began 2 years past. A woman of the streets lodged in room 7 for a fortnight. She was found one morning, taken by another's hand. A tragic business. The constable said her killer was never caught. We cleaned the room thoroughly after the authorities left. Blessed it with prayers. Reopened it for guests. But she never left. The first traveller to lodge there fled before dawn. He claimed a woman stood at the foot of his bed in the darkness. He could see her pale face in the moonlight through the window. She wore a red dress. She said nothing, only stared at him. When he lit his candle, she vanished. He would not stay another moment, even at midnight. He rode on despite the darkness and danger. We thought him drunk or mad, until the next guest reported the same. And the next. Always the same woman in the same red dress. Always standing at the foot of the bed. Always silent. Always vanishing when light touches her. Word has spread through the coaching routes. Travellers refuse to lodge in room 7. They will sleep in the stables rather than that room. My wife and I tried sleeping there ourselves. We thought to prove it foolishness. We retired at 10 o'clock. At midnight, I woke. The woman stood there. Her face was pale as chalk. Her eyes were dark hollows in the moonlight. That red dress hung on her like a funeral shroud. She looked at me without expression, without anger or sadness, just looked. My wife woke and screamed. The woman did not move, did not acknowledge the scream, only stared. I reached for the tinderbox to light a candle. My hands shook so badly I could barely strike the flint. When the candle caught, the woman was gone, simply no longer there. But the room had turned ice cold. Our breath formed clouds in the September warmth. We left immediately. I have locked room 7. No guest will lodge there now. But I hear footsteps above when I work in the tap room below, pacing back and forth. The boards creak with her weight. I go up to check. The door remains locked. The room is empty. But the moment I return downstairs, the footsteps resume. Travellers ask why we have one room always locked. I tell them it needs repairs. The truth would ruin my business entirely. She walks that room every night. That woman in the red dress. Still working, perhaps. Still waiting for customers who will never come. Trapped in the room where she met her end. Samuel Blackwood, innkeeper. The King's Head Inn, York, 14th September. 1681. Archivist's note. Dr. Nathaniel Ashcroft. Inn records verify 1679 incident. Building demolished 1890. Modern pub stands on site. Staff report unexplained footsteps in upper floor rooms. Woman in outdated red clothing occasionally reported by guests in several rooms. End of file. Proceeding to next recovered document. Case file. NOA1592D. Classification. Priest's investigation report. Date of statement. 11th June, 1592. Location. All Saints Church, Cornwall, England. Author. Father Michael Sutton. Report on the Bell Tower phenomena. 1. Father Michael Sutton, parish priest of All Saints Church, do report on the phenomena witnessed in our bell tower. The church bell has rung at odd hours for 3 weeks now. It rings at midnight, every midnight, without fail. But no one pulls the rope. The rope hangs still in the tower. Yet the bell swings and rings. I thought perhaps the wind moved it, but the bell rings on still nights with no breeze. I thought perhaps rats had nested in the mechanism, but I found no nests, no droppings, no signs of animals. The bell simply rings by itself. Always at midnight, always the same slow, measured toll. 12 strikes, then silence. The villagers have begun to fear it. They say it is an ill omen. They call it the death knell. I decided to keep watch in the tower, to witness what causes this phenomenon. I climbed the tower stairs at 11:30. The night was clear, stars bright above. I took my position near the bell. I could see the entire mechanism clearly by lamplight. The rope hung motionless below. The bell sat silent and still. I watched and waited. Midnight approached. I heard the church clock begin to chime below. On the first stroke, the bell above me lurched. No hand touched it. No rope pulled it. It simply began to swing. I stood frozen, watching. The bell swung wider with each movement, back and forth, gathering momentum. Then it struck. The sound was deafening in that small space. I covered my ears. The bell rang out its 12 strokes. I watched the entire time. Nothing physical moved it. No rope, no mechanism, no hand. Yet it swung and rang as if pulled by an invisible sexton. When the 12th stroke ended, the bell slowed. Gradually it came to rest, hanging perfectly still once more, as if it had never moved. I examined the bell closely by lamplight. The metal was ice cold, far colder than the summer night air. Frost had formed on the iron. In June, I touched the bell. My hand burned with cold. I jerked it back. My fingertips were white with frostbite. I descended the tower immediately. My hand ached for 3 days after. The bell continues to ring each midnight. I have stopped trying to explain it. Some force moves that bell. Some presence keeps its vigil, ringing out the hours, marking the passage from day to day. A phantom sexton who will not abandon his post, even in death. Father Michael Sutton, All Saints Church, Cornwall, 11th June 1592. Archivist's note. Dr. Nathaniel Ashcroft. Parish burial records show church sexton Thomas Bright died June 1592. Date illegible. Tradition states he fell from bell tower while ringing midnight service. Phenomenon documented in various parish accounts through 1670s before records cease. End of file. Proceeding to next recovered document. Case file NOA 1758T. Classification. Orphanage. Superintendent's account. Date of statement 29th October 1758. Location St Andrew's Orphanage, Newcastle, England. Author Mrs. Dorothy Marsh, Superintendent. Account of the child in the attic. Why? Dorothy Marsh, Superintendent of St Andrew's Orphanage. Do give account of events concerning the attic dormitory. We house 42 children in this establishment. 20 boys, 22 girls. The girls sleep in the east dormitory, the boys in the west. The attic dormitory has been closed for 5 years. Since the fire, 3 children perished in that attic. Smoke took them before we could reach them. We rebuilt the damaged areas, made the space safe again, but we never moved children back into that attic. The space sits empty and locked. Until last month, the children began reporting a small boy in the orphanage, a boy they did not recognize. He appeared in hallways at night, standing in doorways, always silent, always watching them. The children said he wore a nightshirt. His feet were bare. His face was smudged with soot. I thought they were inventing stories to frighten each other. Children do such things. Then I saw him myself. I was locking the doors at 10 o'clock. I looked up the main staircase. A small boy stood at the top. He could not have been more than 7 years old. He wore only a nightshirt. His feet were indeed bare. His face was dark with what appeared to be soot. I called out to him, asked which dormitory he belonged to. He turned and ran. Up the second flight of stairs, toward the attic. I followed immediately. By the time I reached the second landing, he was gone. The attic door remained locked. I have the only key. It hung on my belt. The boy could not have entered. Yet I heard footsteps above, running across the attic floor. I unlocked the door and climbed the stairs. The attic was empty. Dust lay thick on every surface, except for one set of small footprints. Bare feet, a child's size. The prints walked from the stairs to the far window. Then they stopped, simply ended, as if the child had vanished at that spot. I looked out the window. It was the window where the 3 children had tried to escape the fire, where they were overcome by smoke before help arrived. The footprints in the dust remain. I have tried to sweep them away. By morning, they return. Always the same path. From the stairs to the window. The children see the boy more frequently now. He appears in the dormitory doorways at night, standing there, watching them with hollow eyes, his face always smudged with soot. He never enters the dormitories, only watches from the threshold. Then he turns and runs, up toward the attic. We hear his footsteps on the stairs, running, always running, toward that window, toward escape that never came. Dorothy Marsh, Superintendent St. Andrew's Orphanage, Newcastle, 29th October, 1758. Archivist's note, Dr. Nathaniel Ashcroft. Fire records from 1753 confirm 3 children died in attic fire. Names listed as John Penny, Thomas Wade, and Sarah Cole. Orphanage closed 1803. Building converted to private housing 1820. No modern reports found. End of file. Proceeding to next recovered document. Case file NOA1429L. Classification Hermit's Testament. Date of statement 7th April 1429. Location Hermitage near Whitby, Yorkshire, England. Author Brother Edmund, Hermit. Testament of Brother Edmund. Brother Edmund, Hermit in the service of God. Do give testament to the presence that shares my solitude. I have lived alone in this stone cell for 7 years. The Church granted me permission to pursue a life of prayer and contemplation. My hermitage sits on the cliff overlooking the sea. I have one small room, one window facing east, one door I bar from within. I take my meals through a small opening. Food is left by the monks from the abbey below. I speak to no one. I pray through every hour of day and night. Or I did, until the other hermit arrived. I first heard him 6 months past. Footsteps outside my door at night, walking back and forth. The same path, endlessly repeated. From my door to the cliff edge, back and forth. I thought perhaps the monks were checking on me, but the footsteps came at midnight. Every night, always midnight. I looked out my small window. I saw a figure in the moonlight, a man in a rough habit like my own. He walked from my door toward the cliff, 10 paces out. Then he turned, walked back, 10 paces again, then turned once more, over and over. I called out to him. He did not acknowledge my voice, simply continued his pacing. I watched him for an hour. He never tired, never stopped, never looked toward my window, just walked his path. When the monastery bells rang for matins, he vanished, between one step and the next, simply gone. But he returns every midnight. I have seen him now for 6 months. The same figure in the same habit, walking the same path. 10 paces out, 10 paces back, over and over. I asked the monks if another hermit had lived here before me. They said yes. Brother Thomas had this cell before I took my vows. He lived here for 20 years. He walked the cliff edge each night to contemplate God's vastness. 10 paces from his door. No more, no less. He measured his devotion in steps. One night, he walked too far in the darkness. The cliff gave way beneath him. His body was never recovered from the sea below. Now he walks his path eternally, 10 paces out, 10 paces back, still measuring his devotion, still keeping his nightly vigil. I do not fear him. He was a man of God, as am I. But I cannot sleep while he walks. The footsteps are too loud, too regular, too persistent. Every midnight, every night, for 6 months now, I hear him even through my barred door. The scrape of his sandals on stone, the brush of his habit against the grass, the slight whistle of wind through his passage. 10 paces out, 10 paces back, forever. Brother Edmund, Hermit Hermitage near Whitby, Yorkshire, 7th April, 1429. Archivist's note. Dr. Nathaniel Ashcroft. Hermitage ruins remain visible on clifftop near Whitby Abbey. Records confirm Brother Thomas's death, 1428. Brother Edmund's testament recovered from Abbey Library. Site avoided by local fishermen who report sounds of footsteps at midnight. End of file. Proceeding to next recovered document. Case file NOA 1816. W classification. Police Inspector's Report. Date of statement 19th January 1816. Location Manor House, Dartmoor, Devon, England. Author Inspector William Graves. Report on the Manor House investigation War. Inspector William Graves of the Devon Constabulary. Do report on my investigation of the Manor House on Dartmoor. The house has stood empty for 3 years. The previous owner, Mr. Geoffrey Blackmore, abandoned it suddenly. He claimed the house was unlivable, that something dwelt within its walls. The property has remained vacant since. No tenant will take it, even at reduced rent. The estate requested I investigate. They wish to understand why the house cannot be let. I arrived at the manor on the 18th of January. The house appeared sound from outside. Well-built stone, good roof, windows intact. No obvious disrepair. I unlocked the main door. The interior was dusty, but otherwise undamaged. Furniture remained under cloth coverings. Everything in order. I walked through the ground floor rooms. The parlour, dining room, library. All quiet. All still. I climbed to the first floor. 4 bedchambers, all empty. I checked each room carefully. Nothing unusual. Then I heard it. A sound from above. From the second floor. Someone walking. Slow, heavy footsteps. Crossing from one side of the house to the other. I called out. Asked if anyone was present. The footsteps stopped. Silence. I climbed to the second floor. 3 servants' rooms and a storage space. All doors stood open. All rooms were empty. No one there. I stood in the corridor, listening. The footsteps began again. Directly above my head. In the attic. I found the attic stairs behind a narrow door. I climbed up into the darkness. The attic was long and low. Dust lay thick on the floorboards. My lamp illuminated the space. Empty trunks, old furniture, nothing else. Then I saw the footprints in the dust. A single set of prints, boot prints, large like a man's work boots. They walked from one end of the attic to the other, back and forth, over and over. The prints overlapped where the same path had been walked repeatedly, but there was no one there. I stood perfectly still, watching. The footsteps started again. I saw the dust move, disturbed by invisible feet. New prints appeared before my eyes, walking toward me, Heavy steps, deliberate. The dust compressed with each footfall. Something walked toward me. I could not see it, but I watched its approach. Print after print after print, coming closer. The footsteps stopped 3 feet from where I stood. I felt breath on my face. Cold breath. Something stood before me in the darkness. Invisible. But there. I fled. Down the attic stairs. Down to the ground floor. Out the front door. I did not stop until I reached my horse. The manor house still stands empty. I will not return. I recommend the property be sold for demolition. Something walks that attic. Something that will not leave. William Graves, Inspector Devon Constabulary, 19th January 1816. Archivist's note, Dr. Nathaniel Ashcroft. Property records show house remained empty until 1847 demolition. Construction workers reported persistent footsteps during demolition work. One foreman noted feeling watched from empty air throughout the project. Foundation remains on site. End of file. Proceeding to next recovered document. Case file NOA 1634. Classification. Museum Curator's Notes. Date of statement 6th August 1634. Location Private collection, Oxford, England. Author Mr. Henry Ashford. Curator notes regarding the portrait. Henry Ashford, curator of Lord Pemberton's private collection, do give notes regarding a recent acquisition. Lord Pemberton purchased a portrait at auction last month. A fine piece, oil on canvas. It depicts a gentleman from the previous century, well dressed in black with a white ruff collar. His face is stern, eyes dark and piercing. The artist was unknown, but the work showed considerable skill. Lord Pemberton hung it in the main gallery, between a landscape and a still life. The portrait fit well with the other pieces, until it began to change. I first noticed it 1 week after installation. The gentleman's expression had altered. His stern look had become almost angry. I thought perhaps the lighting played tricks. Different angles change how we perceive paintings. But the next day, the expression was more severe still. The eyes seemed to follow me across the room. A common illusion in portraiture. Yet this felt different, more intentional, more aware. I mentioned it to Lord Pemberton. He dismissed my concerns. Said I spent too many hours alone with the paintings, that my imagination was overactive. But others have noticed now. The household staff refuse to clean the gallery. They say the man in the portrait watches them, that his eyes move, that his expression changes from hour to hour. Lord Pemberton's daughter will not enter the gallery anymore. She claims the painted man smiled at her, a cold smile, a knowing smile. Yesterday, I worked late in the gallery, cataloguing new acquisitions. The sun set while I wrote. The gallery grew dark. I lit candles to continue my work. I glanced up at the portrait. The gentleman's position had changed. In the painting, he had faced forward, looking straight out at the viewer. Now he faced slightly to the left, as if he had turned his head, as if he was looking at something. I stood and examined the painting closely. The brushstrokes showed no signs of alteration. The paint was old and cracked with age. Nothing had been added. Nothing had been changed. Yet the figure had moved. I am certain of it. I left the gallery immediately. This morning I returned with Lord Pemberton. The gentleman in the portrait now faces fully to the left. His eyes stare at the landscape painting beside him. His expression is one of intense interest, as if he studies the landscape, as if he wishes to step into it, to escape his own canvas. Lord Pemberton sees it too now. He cannot deny the change. We have removed the portrait from the wall. It sits facing the wall in the storage room. But I hear sounds from that room, scratching sounds, as if fingernails scrape against canvas. I fear what we will see when we turn it around again. Henry Ashford, Curator Private Collection, Oxford, 6th August, 1634 Archivist Note. Dr. Nathaniel Ashcroft Collection, Records Lost in 1666, Great Fire. No trace of described portrait in surviving inventories. Similar accounts of moving portraits appear in folklore, but physical evidence remains elusive. Phenomenon typically attributed to memory distortion. End of file. Proceeding to next recovered document. Case file. NOA 1791V. Classification. Doctor's case notes. Date of statement. 12th May 1791. Location. Bedlam Hospital, London, England. Author, Dr. Jonathan Hartwell. Case notes. Patient unknown. I, Dr. Jonathan Hartwell, physician at Bedlam Hospital, do record the case of a patient brought to us in April. She was found wandering near the Thames. No identification on her person. No family came forward to claim her. She appeared to be in her middle years, well dressed, suggesting some means. But she would not speak, would not give her name, would not respond to any question. She simply stared ahead with vacant eyes. We admitted her for observation. She seemed docile enough. No violence, no agitation. She sat in her room without moving, hour after hour, simply sitting and staring at nothing. We fed her by hand. She would not feed herself. We dressed her in hospital garments. She did not resist or assist. She was like a doll, a breathing, living doll with no will of its own. Then the speaking began, not from her mouth, from the air around her. I was examining her one morning. I heard a voice, a woman's voice, but not the patient's. It came from beside her, from empty space. The voice said, "He took me to the water." I looked around the room. Only the patient and I were present. I asked who spoke. The voice answered, "He took me to the water and pushed me in." The patient did not move, did not blink, but the voice continued. I could not swim. He knew I could not swim. I called for another doctor. Dr. Pemberton came immediately. The voice spoke to him as well. The water filled my lungs. I saw his face above me. The voice was clear and distinct, female, cultured accent, unmistakably real, but it came from nowhere, from the air itself. The patient remained motionless. Her lips never moved. Over the following days, the voice told us its story. A husband who brought his wife to the river, who pushed her from the bank when no one watched, who let her drown while he stood above, who reported her missing, who mourned publicly, who inherited her fortune. The voice gave details, names, dates, places. I reported this information to the authorities. They investigated. They found the husband. He confessed immediately when confronted. His wife's body was recovered from the Thames. Dead 3 weeks. The patient was the murdered woman's sister. The shock of discovering the truth had broken her mind. Or perhaps her sister's spirit had broken through, using her as a vessel, as a voice, to speak for the dead. After the husband's arrest, the voice ceased. The patient remained silent, still sitting and staring, but the air around her is quiet now. Her sister has been heard. Her sister has been avenged. There is nothing more to say. Dr. Jonathan Hartwell, Bedlam Hospital, London, 12th May, 1791. Archivist's note. Dr. Nathaniel Ashcroft Hospital records confirm patient admission, April 1791. Court records verify husband's conviction for murder. Patient identified as Miss Eleanor Thorne. Released to family care 1792. No medical explanation found for disembodied voice witnessed by multiple staff. End of file. Proceeding to next recovered document. Case file. NOA 1557C. Classification. Lighthouse Keeper's Journal. Date of statement. 23rd November, 1557. Location. Flamborough Lighthouse, Yorkshire, England. Author Robert Whitby, Lighthouse Keeper. Journal entry. The voice in the fog. I, Robert Whitby, Keeper of Flamborough Lighthouse. Do record what I have heard these past nights. The autumn fogs have come early this year. Thick blankets of mist roll in from the sea each evening. By nightfall, I cannot see 10 feet from the lighthouse. I tend the light through the night, ensuring it burns bright to guide ships past the rocks. I have kept this light for 12 years. I know every sound of this place, the wind, the waves, the gulls, the bellboy in the channel. But 3 nights ago, I heard a new sound. A voice calling from the fog, a man's voice, shouting, "Help me, please help me." I stepped outside immediately. The fog was thick as wool. I called back, "Where are you?" The voice answered, "I am lost. I cannot see the shore." I asked which direction he called from. The voice seemed to come from the rocks below the lighthouse, from the place where the tide crashes hardest. I took my lantern and climbed down the path. The rocks were slippery with spray. I called out as I descended. The voice guided me. "I am here. Please hurry." I reached the base of the rocks. The voice sounded very close now. "I am here." I held my lantern high. The light cut through the fog. I saw the rocks, the waves, the spray. Nothing else. No one there. I called out again. The voice answered from behind me. "I am here. Why do you not help me?" I spun around. No one. Just fog and rocks and water. The voice called from different directions now, moving around me. "Help me. I am drowning." But I saw no one. I climbed back to the lighthouse, my hands shaking on the rail. The voice followed me up the path, calling, begging, growing angry when I did not respond. "Why will you not help me? I am dying." I reached the lighthouse and barred the door. The voice circled outside. All night it called, sometimes pleading, sometimes angry, sometimes weeping. At dawn, the fog lifted. The voice stopped. But the next night, when the fog returned, so did the voice. The same calls for help, the same impossible locations. Now on the 3rd night, I sit in the lighthouse. The fog has come again. I hear the voice starting. "Help me. Please, I am lost." I will not go down to the rocks tonight. I know what I will find. Nothing. Only fog and water and stones. The voice belongs to no living man. I asked the villagers about it. They say a sailor drowned here 40 years past. He fell from his ship in the fog. They heard him calling all night from the rocks. But the fog was too thick to find him. By morning, he had been taken by the tide. Now he calls every fog. Still lost. Still seeking help that never comes. Robert Whitby, Lighthouse Keeper, Flamborough Lighthouse, Yorkshire. 23rd November, 1557. Archivist's note. Dr. Nathaniel Ashcroft. Lighthouse records document keeper reports a voice through 1680s. Phenomenon tied specifically to fog conditions. Modern lighthouse keepers report no voices, but automated light systems replaced human keepers in 1996. Historical drowning unverified. End of file. Proceeding to next recovered document. Case file. NOA 1832F. Classification. Schoolmaster's report. Date of statement. 9th March 1832. Location. St. Edmund's School, Canterbury, England. Author. Mr. Charles Whitfield. Headmaster report on the boy in the library. I, Charles Whitfield, Headmaster of St. Edmund's School, do report on events concerning our library. The school library occupies the old north wing. It was the original schoolhouse before we built the new halls. The building dates from the 16th century. Stone walls, high ceilings, narrow windows. The books are well kept. The space is clean. Students use the library for study and reading. Until last month. Now they refuse to enter alone. They claim a boy sits in the corner, a boy who does not belong. The students describe him consistently. Young, perhaps 10 or 11 years old, dark hair, pale skin, wearing outdated clothing from the last century. He sits at the small reading desk in the corner, always the same desk. He appears to be reading, his head bent over an open book. But when approached, he vanishes, simply disappears between one moment and the next. I dismissed it as schoolboy fancy, the younger boys creating stories to frighten each other. Then my assistant master, Mr. Thompson, reported seeing the boy. He was shelving books on a Saturday afternoon. The library was otherwise empty. He glanced at the corner desk. A boy sat there, reading. Mr. Thompson did not recognize him. He walked over to ask which dormitory he belonged to. As he approached, the boy looked up. Mr. Thompson said the boy's face was wrong somehow. Too pale, too still. The eyes did not blink. Mr. Thompson stopped walking. The boy returned to his book. Mr. Thompson backed away slowly. He turned to leave the library. When he glanced back, the desk was empty. I decided to observe the library myself. I stationed myself there yesterday afternoon. I sat at the main desk with paperwork. I watched the corner where the boy reportedly appears. For 2 hours, nothing happened. The afternoon sun moved across the floor. The library grew dim. I lit the lamps. I glanced toward the corner desk. A boy sat there. He had not been there a moment before. He simply was there now, reading a book by lamplight. I stood slowly. I walked toward him. My footsteps echoed in the quiet library. The boy did not look up. I came within 10 feet of the desk. I could see him clearly. Dark hair, pale skin, clothing from the previous century. I spoke to him, asked his name. He raised his head slowly. He looked directly at me. His eyes were hollow, empty, like looking into wells. I felt cold spread through my chest. The boy smiled. It was not a child's smile. It was ancient, knowing. Then he was gone. The chair empty. The book on the desk closed. I examined the book immediately. It was a Latin grammar from 1734. The pages were brittle with age. I have closed the library until further notice. The boys are using the classroom for study, but I hear sounds from the north wing. The creak of the reading desk chair, the rustle of turning pages. Someone still reads in that corner, even in the locked and empty library. Charles Whitfield, Headmaster, St. Edmund's School, Canterbury, 9th March, 1832. Archivist's note. Dr. Nathaniel Ashcroft. School records indicate student death, 1731. Name Edmund Price, age 10. Cause listed as fever. Price was known for spending hours in library corner. Library remains in use. Modern students report quiet boy sightings continue sporadically. End of file. Proceeding to next recovered document. Case file NOA 1476N. Classification Monk's account. Date of statement 18th July 1476. Location Tintern Abbey, Wales. Author Brother William of Hereford. Account of the chanting in the cloister war. Brother William of Hereford, monk of Tintern Abbey, do give account of the phenomenon in our cloister. Our abbey follows the Cistercian rule. We rise at midnight for matins. We chant the offices 8 times daily. Our lives are devoted to prayer and labour. We are 12 monks in this abbey, all devoted, all faithful, all living. But a 13th voice has joined our chanting. It began during the feast of St. John. We were chanting Compline in the church, the final office before sleep. Our voices rose together in the Latin hymns. Then I heard it, another voice, deeper than any of ours, resonant and strong. It sang the Latin words perfectly, but it came from the empty cloister. I glanced at my brothers. They heard it too. Their faces showed confusion and fear. The abbot raised his hand. We ceased our chanting. The other voice continued alone, singing the Compline hymn, the Latin pure and clear, coming from the cloister arcade. The abbot walked to the cloister entrance. We followed. The cloister was empty. Nothing but the open square of grass, the covered walkway around it, the columns and arches. No one there. But the voice continued. It moved around the cloister, as if someone walked the covered path, singing as they went. We stood at the entrance listening. The voice completed the entire Compline service, every word correct, every note perfect. Then it fell silent. The abbot blessed the cloister with holy water. He commanded any troubled spirit to depart in God's name. Nothing changed. The cloister remained silent. We returned to our cells to sleep. But the next evening at Compline, the voice returned, and every evening since. Now we hear it at every office, at Lord's, at Prime, at Terce, Sext, Nun, at Vespers and Compline. Always the same deep voice, always perfect Latin, always coming from the empty cloister. We have searched for explanation. The abbot consulted the Abbey Chronicles. 50 years ago, a monk named Brother Thomas died. He had been the precentor, the leader of our chanting. He died suddenly during Vespers. He collapsed in the choir stalls. His heart gave out while singing. His last words were in Latin, a verse from the Psalms. Now he sings again. Brother Thomas returns for every office. His voice joins ours from beyond the grave, still faithful, still devoted, still keeping the hours. Even death has not excused him from his duty. We have grown accustomed to his presence. The 13th voice in our choir. We no longer fear it. Instead, we find it comforting. Brother Thomas keeps the offices with us, as he did in life, as he will for eternity. Brother William of Hereford Tintern Abbey, Wales, 18th July 1476. Archivist's note. Dr. Nathaniel Ashcroft, Tintern Abbey, dissolved 1536 under Henry VIII. Ruins remain a tourist site. Visitors occasionally report hearing chanting from empty cloisters, particularly at traditional office hours. Welsh folklore Includes numerous accounts of phantom monks in ruined abbeys. End of file. Proceeding to next recovered document. Case file. NOA 1743B. Classification. Court testimony. Date of statement. 4th December 1743. Location. Magistrates' Court, Essex, England. Author. Mrs. Sarah Pemberton. Widow testimony. Regarding the haunting of Rose Cottage. I, Sarah Pemberton, widow of the late Thomas Pemberton, do give testimony regarding my former home. Rose Cottage was my residence for 30 years. My husband and I raised our children there. It was a good house, a happy house, until my husband's passing last winter. He died in his bed upstairs. Peacefully, the doctor said, in his sleep. I stayed in the cottage after his death. I had nowhere else to go. My children are grown and settled elsewhere. For 3 months, I lived there alone. Everything seemed normal at first. Then I began to hear footsteps, at night, always at the same hour, 10:30, the time my husband always retired to bed. I would hear him climbing the stairs, slow, heavy steps. The third step from the top always creaked under his weight, just as it had when he lived. I told myself it was the house settling, old timbers shifting in the night, but the steps were too regular, too familiar, too much like Thomas. One night, I worked up courage to investigate. I stood at the bottom of the stairs. I heard the footsteps begin above, crossing the bedroom floor, coming toward the stairs, descending, step by step. The third from the top creaked. I saw no one, but I felt him pass me. A coldness moved through the air, the smell of his pipe tobacco, the brush of cloth against my arm. He walked to his chair by the fire. I heard the chair creak as weight settled into it. I stood frozen in the hallway, too afraid to move. I heard him sigh, the same satisfied sigh he made each night. When he sat down after a long day, I whispered his name. Thomas? No answer. Just the creak of the chair as he settled himself. This happened every night for a week, always at 10:30. Always the same pattern, footsteps descending, weight in his chair, his sigh, then silence, until dawn, when I would hear him climbing the stairs again, returning to the bedroom, to the bed where he died. I could not bear it. I abandoned the cottage a month ago. I lodge now with my daughter in the village. The cottage stands empty, but neighbours report seeing candlelight in the windows at 10:30 each night. They see a shadow moving inside, a man's figure, crossing from the stairs to the chair by the fire. Thomas keeps his nightly routine, even without the living to observe him. I will not return to Rose Cottage. I cannot live with the ghost of my husband. Sarah Pemberton, Widow Magistrates' Court, Essex, 4th December 1743. Archivist's note. Dr. Nathaniel Ashcroft. Property records show Rose Cottage remained vacant for 8 years. Subsequent tenants reported similar phenomena. Cottage demolished 1802. Local historian notes site was incorporated into larger estate. No modern structure occupies exact location of original cottage. End of file. Proceeding to next recovered document. Case file NOA 1609S. Classification. Doctor's personal record. Date of statement. 27th May 1609. Location. Private practice, Bath, England. Author. Dr. Marcus Blackwell. Personal record. The patient who knows I, Dr. Marcus Blackwell, physician of Bath, do record events concerning a patient who came to me in April. She was brought by her family, a young woman, perhaps 25 years of age. They said she had fallen ill with fever 3 weeks prior. The fever broke after 5 days, but she had not been the same since. She sat in my office, staring ahead with distant eyes. Her family said she no longer recognized them. She spoke, but her words made no sense. She mentioned people she had never met, places she had never visited, events that happened before her birth. I examined her thoroughly. Her physical health seemed restored, no sign of lasting damage from the fever, but her mind was clearly affected. I asked her simple questions: her name, her age, where she lived. She answered each question, but the answers were wrong. She gave a different name: Margaret Fletcher, a different age, 42 years, a different home, a cottage in Somerset. I assured her family this was common after severe fever. The mind becomes confused. Memory returns in time. But privately, I had doubts. She spoke with such certainty, such detail. I asked her about this Margaret Fletcher. She told me Margaret had died 15 years ago of fever in her cottage in Somerset, the same fever this young woman had just survived. I felt a chill despite the warm May afternoon. I asked her how she knew about Margaret. She looked at me with those distant eyes. "I am Margaret," she said. I sent the family away, told them to return in 1 week. I needed time to consider this case. That night, I could not sleep. The young woman's voice echoed in my mind. "I am Margaret." I decided to investigate. I travelled to Somerset the next day. I found the village she had mentioned. I asked at the inn about Margaret Fletcher. The innkeeper remembered her, a widow who lived alone. She died of fever in 1594, the same year the young woman claimed. The cottage still stood, now occupied by another family. I spoke with the village rector. He showed me the burial records. Margaret Fletcher died April 23rd, 1594, age 42. The details matched exactly what the young woman had told me. I returned to Bath, deeply troubled. When the family brought her back, I questioned her further. I asked her things only Margaret Fletcher could know: the name of her deceased husband, the location of her cottage, the name of the rector who buried her. She answered every question correctly. Details that would require specific knowledge, not things a feverish mind could invent. I have no explanation for this. Either the young woman somehow learned Margaret Fletcher's history, or something far stranger has occurred. The fever broke the boundaries of her mind, and another mind, long departed, has taken residence. Margaret Fletcher has returned, in a body not her own. The family has taken her to London, to see specialists there. I do not believe they will help. This is beyond the realm of medicine. Dr. Marcus Blackwell, private practice, Bath, 27th May, 1609. Archivist note. Dr. Nathaniel Ashcroft. Similar cases of fever personalities documented in medical literature through 19th century. Modern psychology terms this dissociative identity disorder. However, accuracy of historical details in such cases remains unexplained. No follow-up records found for this patient. End of file. Proceeding to next recovered document. Case file NOA 1386Q. Classification: Village Constable's Report. Date of statement: 15th October 1386. Location: Blackwood Forest, Shropshire, England. Author: John Merrick, Constable. Report on the Blackwood Forest incident. Why? John Merrick, Constable of the village of Ashwell. Do report on the incident in Blackwood Forest. 3 travellers went missing in the forest last month. They entered on the old Roman road. They never emerged on the other side. We organised a search party. 12 men from the village. We entered the forest at dawn. The Roman road cut straight through. It should take 3 hours to cross. We walked for 6 hours. The road never ended. We kept walking forward. But the forest stretched endlessly before us. The same trees, the same path, over and over, as if we walked in circles. But the road was straight. We marked trees with chalk as we passed, to ensure we did not double back. Yet we found our own marks repeatedly. Trees we had already passed, appearing ahead of us again. The forest was trapping us. By afternoon, the men grew frightened. Some wanted to turn back, but turning back led us forward. Walking backward led us forward. Every direction led deeper into the forest. We heard singing, a woman's voice, coming from somewhere in the trees, not words we recognized. Old words, maybe no words at all, just sounds like singing, beautiful and terrible. The voice moved through the forest, never coming closer, never moving farther away, always the same distance, always just out of sight. Thomas Miller ran toward the singing. He crashed through the underbrush. We called after him. He did not stop. We heard him running. Then we heard him scream. Then silence. We searched for him. Found nothing. No trace, no tracks, no sign of struggle. He simply vanished. We huddled together on the road. Night fell quickly under the trees, darker than any night I have known. Our torches barely cut the blackness. The singing continued, all through the night, circling us. That woman's voice, speaking in sounds we could not understand. At dawn, the forest released us. We found ourselves at the forest edge, the village visible across the meadow. We had walked all night, but the forest spat us out where we entered, as if we had never moved at all. Thomas Miller is still missing. So are the 3 original travellers. I have posted warnings. No one is to enter Blackwood Forest. The old Roman road is closed. But I still hear that singing. When the wind blows from the forest, I hear her voice, that woman, still singing her wordless song, still waiting in the trees, still hungry for travellers to trap. John Merrick, Constable Village of Ashwell, Shropshire. 15th October, 1386. Archivist's note. Dr. Nathaniel Ashcroft, Roman road through Blackwood Forest closed 14th century. Reasons unclear in historical record. Forest remains. Local customs still avoids the area. Modern hikers report disorientation and unusual acoustic phenomena. 4 documented disappearances since 1950, all recovered safely. End of file. Proceeding to next recovered document. Case file NOA1782M. Classification: Ship Captain's Log. Date of statement: 9th June 1782. Location: Atlantic Ocean. Aboard the merchant ship Prosperity Author. Captain Edward Morris, ship's log. The passenger Y. Captain Edward Morris of the merchant vessel Prosperity. Do record events concerning an unusual passenger. We departed Bristol on the 1st of June. Bound for the American colonies. 20 crew members. Cargo of textiles and iron goods. 8 passengers travelling to the New World. Among them, a woman. She gave her name as Mrs. Catherine Wright. A widow, she said. Going to join family in Boston. She kept to herself during the voyage. Remained in her cabin most days. Took her meals alone. spoke to no one. The crew found her unsettling. She was too pale, they said, too quiet. Her eyes were wrong somehow. I dismissed their superstitions. Sailors see omens in everything at sea. Then the accidents began. On the third day, a rope snapped during sail adjustment. Nearly struck 2 men. That rope was new and sound. No reason for it to break. On the 4th day, a barrel of salted pork went rotten. Despite being sealed and stored properly, the meat was crawling with maggots. We threw it overboard. On the 5th day, the compass began spinning, pointing in all directions, then settling on north, then spinning again. Our navigator could not explain it. The instrument was functioning correctly, yet it could not hold direction. That evening, I saw Mrs. Wright on deck. She stood at the rail, looking out at the darkening sea. I approached to inquire if she needed anything. She turned to face me. Her eyes reflected the sunset, reflected it too brightly, like an animal's eyes in lamplight. She smiled. "We are not alone, Captain." I asked what she meant. She pointed at the water. "They follow us. They have been following since we left port." I looked where she pointed. I saw nothing but waves. "Who follows us?" I asked. "The drowned," she said. Then she returned to her cabin. I thought her mad. Grief from her husband's passing, perhaps. But that night, I heard singing. Coming from below deck, from the passenger cabins, a woman's voice, but not singing any hymn I recognized. The words were not English, not any language I knew. I went below to investigate. The singing came from Mrs. Wright's cabin. I knocked on her door. The singing stopped. She opened the door. "Yes, Captain?" "Were you singing, madam?" "No, Captain. I was sleeping." But I had just heard her voice. I am certain of it. She closed the door. The singing did not resume. This happened every night since. Always at midnight. Always that strange singing. Always stopping when I investigate. And the accidents continue. Yesterday, a man fell from the rigging. He swears something pushed him, but he was alone up there. Today, we found water in the hold, salt water, but we have no leak. The ship is sound, yet water appears, rising slowly. We bail it out. It returns. Mrs. Wright stands at the rail every evening, watching the sea, speaking to things I cannot see. The crew wants her put off at the next port. They say she is a curse, that she brings the dead with her. I am beginning to believe them. We make landfall in 4 days. Mrs. Wright will not sail with us again. Edward Morris, Captain Merchant Ship Prosperity, Atlantic Ocean, 9th June, 1782. Archivist's note, Dr. Nathaniel Ashcroft, Ship's Records show. Prosperity arrived, Boston, June 13th, 1782. No passenger named Catherine Wright appears in port documentation. Captain Morris died 1783, cause unrecorded. Vessel decommissioned, 1785 after series of accidents and crew superstitions rendered it unseaworthy. End of file. Proceeding to next recovered document. Case file, NOA1458V. Classification, Asylum Attendant's Testimony, Date of Statement, 22nd January, 1458. Location, St. Mary's Asylum, Norfolk, England. Author, Peter Ashford. Attendant testimony regarding Cell 9. I, Peter Ashford, attendant at St. Mary's Asylum, do testify regarding the patient in Cell 9. He was brought to us 3 months ago. A young man, perhaps 30 years of age. The magistrate said he had been found in a church, standing at the altar, speaking in tongues. They could not remove him from the church for 2 days. He would not eat, would not drink, would not sleep, simply stood there, speaking. Finally, he collapsed from exhaustion. They brought him here. We placed him in cell 9. It is our strongest cell. Stone walls, iron door, small window, for patients who might harm themselves. He seemed calm at first. He sat on the cot, staring at the wall, silent. We brought him food. He did not eat. We brought him water. He did not drink. He simply sat and stared. On the 3rd day, he began speaking. The same strange language from the church. Not English, not Latin, not French. Nothing any of us recognized. The sounds were harsh, guttural. They hurt to hear. He spoke continuously, for hours at a time, never pausing for breath. His voice grew hoarse but did not stop. The other patients became disturbed. They screamed when they heard him. They covered their ears. Some wept uncontrollably. We moved them to the far wing, away from cell 9, but his voice carries, through stone walls, through closed doors. We hear him throughout the asylum. That constant speaking, those terrible sounds. I was assigned to watch him at night, to ensure he did not harm himself. I sat outside his cell with my lantern, listening to his voice. It changed at midnight, became deeper, slower, no longer one voice, multiple voices speaking together, all from his mouth, different tones, different rhythms, overlapping. I looked through the viewing slot. He sat on the cot, but his shadow on the wall was wrong. It did not match his position. His shadow stood. While he sat, his shadow moved. While he remained still, the shadow paced the cell, back and forth, while his body sat motionless. I watched for an hour. His shadow had its own life, independent of him. It reached toward me. The shadow hand stretched across the wall, toward the door, toward me. I stepped back. The shadow could not reach beyond the cell. It stopped at the doorframe, straining, reaching, but unable to cross that threshold. I fled my post. I could not remain. The shadow was trying to escape, and the voices from his mouth never stopped. Now we keep him locked at all times. 3 locks on the iron door. No one enters cell 9. We slide food through a slot. He never eats it. Yet he does not weaken. He sits in there, speaking in those voices, while his shadow moves, while something inside him struggles to break free. We pray the locks will hold. Peter Ashford, Attendant St. Mary's Asylum, Norfolk, 22nd January, 1458. Archivist's note. Dr. Nathaniel Ashcroft. Asylum records end abruptly. February 1458. Building destroyed by fire same month. Cause listed as accidental. No mention of casualties or patient relocations. Site remained vacant until 1520. Modern psychiatric facility built on different location in Norfolk. End of file. Proceeding to next recovered document. Case file NOA 1673L. Classification. Manor servant's account. Date of statement 5th March 1673. Location Thornfield Manor, Derbyshire, England. Author Mary Sutton, housekeeper. Account of the mirror in the East Wing. I, Mary Sutton, housekeeper of Thornfield Manor. Do give account of the mirror that hangs in the East Wing. The mirror has been in the manor for generations. It stands taller than a man. Ornate gilt frame, Venetian glass. It hangs in the East Wing drawing room. A beautiful piece, worth a considerable sum. But something is wrong with it. The reflection does not match the room. I first noticed it 2 weeks past. I was dusting the drawing room. I glanced at the mirror. The reflection showed the room correctly, the furniture, the windows, the paintings. But the light was different. In the room, morning sun came through the east windows, bright and warm. In the mirror, the room was dim, as if it were evening. I stepped closer to examine the glass. The reflection showed me clearly, but behind me, the room was dark, while the actual room remained bright. I turned to look. The room was sunny and normal. I looked back at the mirror. The reflection showed darkness. I told Lord Thornfield. He dismissed it as tricks of light, angles and reflections playing games. But the mirror's strangeness increased. The next day, I saw furniture in the mirror that does not exist. A chair in the corner. We have no chair in that corner. But the mirror showed one. Empty and waiting. A table by the window. We have no table there. But the mirror showed one. Set for tea. I watched the mirror for an hour. The reflected room changed slowly. A painting appeared on the wall. A painting we do not own. Curtains moved in a breeze, but our curtains hung still. The mirror shows a different room, a room that exists somewhere else, or existed at some other time. Yesterday, I saw a figure in the mirror, standing in the reflected doorway, a woman in an old-fashioned gown. I spun around. No one there. The doorway empty. I looked back at the mirror. The woman was closer. She had moved into the reflected room. She walked toward the mirror, toward me. Her face was pale, her eyes hollow. She reached out her hand, placed it against the glass. From her side, I saw her palm pressed flat against the inside of the mirror. I reached out slowly. I touched the glass where her hand pressed. The glass was ice cold. It burned my fingers. I jerked back. The woman smiled. Then she faded, simply dissolved into the darkness of the reflected room. I have covered the mirror with cloth. I told Lord Thornfield we must remove it. He refuses. It is a family heirloom. It stays. But I will not uncover it. I will not look into that glass again. I know what I saw. Another room exists in that mirror. Another place. And someone lives there. Someone who watches our world. Someone who wants to cross over. Mary Sutton, housekeeper, Thornfield Manor, Derbyshire. 5th March, 1673. Archivist's note. Dr. Nathaniel Ashcroft Manor records confirm. Venetian mirror purchase. 1620. Thornfield Manor destroyed by fire. 1688. Contents auctioned. Mirror's current location unknown. Similar phenomena reported with antique mirrors suggest psychological projection, but consistent accounts across centuries warrant further investigation. End of file. Proceeding to next recovered document. Case file. NOA1521R. Classification. Vicar's Journal entry. Date of statement. 17th November 1521. Location: St. Cuthbert's Church, Durham, England. Author: Vicar Thomas Gray. Journal entry: the baptismal font. I, Thomas Gray, Vicar of St. Cuthbert's Church, do record events concerning our baptismal font. The font is ancient. Norman stonework from the 11th century. It has blessed countless souls across 500 years. But something has gone wrong. The holy water will not remain blessed. I perform the blessing each Sunday. I speak the Latin prayers. I make the sign of the cross over the water. By Monday morning, the water has turned. It is dark, almost black. It smells of rot, of decay. I empty the font and scrub it clean. I fill it with fresh water from the well. I bless it again. By the next day, it is dark once more. This has continued for 3 weeks. I cannot perform baptisms. I cannot offer holy water to the faithful. The font has become corrupted. I examined the stone carefully, looking for cracks where foul water might seep in. I found nothing. The stone is solid. The well water is clean and pure. Only after the blessing does the water darken, as if the blessing itself causes the corruption. I consulted the church records, looking for any mention of similar events. I found an entry from 200 years past. A baptism gone wrong. An infant died during the ceremony. The child was sickly, the records say. The cold water was too much for its weak constitution. The child passed while still in the font. The vicar, at that time, wrote of his grief, of his guilt. He felt he had failed the child, failed to save its mortal body, while trying to save its soul. He left the church soon after. The records do not say where he went. Last Sunday, I attempted a baptism. A healthy child, 6 months old. I lifted the child toward the font. The water began to churn, bubbling up from below, though nothing heated it. The water turned black before my eyes. I stepped back. The parents cried out in fear. I could not complete the ceremony. We baptized the child with water from a basin instead, in a different part of the church. The font sits empty now. I dare not fill it. Something dwells in that ancient stone. Something that corrupts the blessed water. Something that remembers the child who died and will not allow another child to be baptized there. Thomas Gray, Vicar St. Cuthbert's Church, Durham, 17th November, 1521. Archivist's note, Dr. Nathaniel Ashcroft. Church records confirm infant death during baptism, 1321. Font replaced 1540 during church renovations. Original font fragments preserved in church crypt. Modern font shows no unusual phenomena. Chemical analysis of water samples from historical accounts unavailable. End of file. Proceeding to next recovered document. Case file NOA1805K. Classification. Detective Inspector's Notes. Date of statement 12th August 1805. Location Metropolitan Police Office, London, England. Author Detective Inspector James Whitmore. Private notes. The Whitechapel Witness. I, Detective Inspector James Whitmore, do record notes on an unusual witness to a recent crime. A gentleman was found deceased in Whitechapel last week. He had been robbed and left in an alley. His money purse taken. His rings removed. A tragic but common occurrence in that area. We had no witnesses. No one saw the crime, or so we believed. Yesterday, a young girl came to the station, perhaps 12 years of age. She said she witnessed the gentleman's attack. She described the scene in perfect detail, the time, the location, the gentleman's appearance. She even described his pocket watch, a gold watch with his initials engraved. All correct. I asked why she had not come forward sooner. She said she had been afraid. I asked her to describe the attackers. She provided details, 3 men, their heights, their builds, their clothing. I took notes carefully. Then I asked a question to test her account. What did you do after you witnessed this? She answered without hesitation. I followed the gentleman home. I was confused. You followed the victim? Yes, sir. I walked behind him all the way. To his home? Yes, sir. Number 47 Marylebone Street. That was indeed the victim's address. but something was wrong with her statement. You followed him after he was attacked? Yes, sir. He walked very slowly. I felt cold. The gentleman died in that alley. She nodded. Yes, sir, but he did not know it yet. I stared at her. What do you mean? He got up after the men left. He walked home. I followed him. The gentleman was dead. Yes, sir, but he walked anyway. She described his journey in detail, how he stumbled through the streets, how he paused at his own front door, how he reached for the knocker but could not lift it, how he finally sat on his doorstep, how he remained there until morning, when his housekeeper found his body still sitting on the step. But that was impossible. The body was discovered in the alley, not at his home. I checked the reports again. The body was found in the alley. I am certain of this. Yet the girl described his home accurately, a home she claimed to have followed him to. I asked her name. She smiled sadly. I have no name anymore, sir. Not since I died. She stood and walked toward the door. I called after her. She did not stop. She walked through the closed door, simply passed through the solid wood, and was gone. I sat at my desk for an hour, unable to move, unable to make sense of what I witnessed. The girl was not alive, yet she gave testimony. Testimony I believed to be true. She followed a dead man home, because she herself was dead, and only the dead can see the newly departed. James Whitmore, Detective Inspector Metropolitan Police Office, London, 12th August, 1805. Archivist's note. Dr. Nathaniel Ashcroft. Police records verify Whitechapel victim found in alley. Date and details match. Inspector Whitmore's private notes found in estate sale, 1890. No official report mentions child witness. Whitmore retired 1810, citing health reasons. Subsequent career shows no unusual cases. End of file. Proceeding to next recovered document. Case file NOA1397D. Classification. University professor's letter. Date of statement 3rd April 1397. Location Oxford University, England. Author Professor Martin of Canterbury. Letter to the University Chancellor Boise. Professor Martin of Canterbury do. Write to the Chancellor regarding events in the library. I am Professor of Theology and Philosophy. I have taught at this university for 15 years. I spend many hours in the library, among the manuscripts and ancient texts. It is my sanctuary, my place of study and contemplation. But I can no longer work there. Something reads over my shoulder. I first noticed it 1 month past. I was studying a Greek manuscript. I felt someone behind me, the sense of being watched. I turned. No one there. The library was empty. I returned to my work. The feeling persisted, stronger now. Someone stood directly behind me. I could feel their presence, the warmth of a body close to mine, but I saw no one. I tried to ignore it. I continued reading. Then I felt breath on my neck, cold breath. I spun around. Still no one, but I heard breathing, slow and steady, right behind where I stood. I left the library immediately. I thought perhaps I had worked too long, that my mind was creating phantoms. But it happened again the next day, and every day since. Whenever I study in the library, within minutes I feel the presence. Someone stands behind me, looking over my shoulder, reading what I read. The breathing grows louder. Sometimes I hear whispers, words I cannot quite distinguish, speaking in a language I do not recognize. Yesterday, I felt a hand on my shoulder, a cold, heavy hand. Pressing down, I looked. I saw nothing, but I felt the weight, the pressure of fingers, gripping my shoulder. I could not move. I was held in place by an invisible hand. The breathing was loud in my ear. The whispers grew urgent, still incomprehensible, still terrifying. I struggled. The hand released me. I ran from the library. I have not returned. Other scholars report similar experiences, feeling watched while they study, hearing breathing, feeling cold hands. Some hear the whispers more clearly than I did. They say the voice speaks in Old English, from before the Norman invasion, asking questions, demanding to know what we read, begging to be taught. One scholar claims the presence followed him to his rooms. He woke in the night. The breathing was beside his bed. The cold hand touched his face. The whispers filled his chamber. He left Oxford the next morning. The library grows empty now. Scholars avoid it. We work in our own chambers with borrowed books. But the presence may not stay confined to the library. It seeks knowledge. It seeks to learn. It follows those who read. I fear what will happen if it learns enough, if it gains the knowledge it seeks. What will it do then? Professor Martin of Canterbury, Oxford University, 3rd April 1397. Archivist's note. Dr. Nathaniel Ashcroft, University records show library closed for repairs, April-November 1397. No details given. Architectural records show no renovation work occurred. Library reopened without explanation. Modern scholars report occasional cold spots in certain sections. No breathing or whispers documented in recent decades. End of file. Proceeding to next recovered document. Case file. NOA1718P. Classification. Toll Keeper's Statement. Date of statement. 28th September, 1718. Location. Stone Bridge, Cumberland, England. Author. Richard Blackwood. Toll Keeper. Statement regarding the bridge at midnight high. Richard Blackwood, keeper of the toll bridge over the River Eden. Do give statement regarding midnight crossings. I have kept this bridge for 8 years. I collect tolls from all who cross. Travellers, merchants, farmers with their goods. The bridge is well travelled by day, but at night it grows quiet. Few cross after dark. The road is dangerous. Highwaymen prey on lone travellers. Most wait until morning to cross. But one traveller crosses every midnight. The same traveller, every single night. For 3 months now. I hear his horse before I see him. The hoofbeats on the stone. Slow and steady, approaching from the north. I step out of my cottage, lantern in hand, ready to collect the toll. The rider appears in my lamplight, a gentleman on a dark horse. He wears a travelling cloak. His face is shadowed by his hat. He never speaks. I ask for the toll. He reaches into his cloak, produces a coin, drops it in my hand. The coin is always ice cold, so cold it burns my palm. I step aside. He rides across the bridge. The hoofbeats echo on the stone, slow and measured. He reaches the far side. Then he is gone, simply vanishes into the darkness. This happens every midnight, without fail. I have tried speaking to him, asking his destination, asking his name. He never responds, never acknowledges my questions, simply pays his toll and rides on. Last week, I decided to follow him. I saddled my own horse. I waited for his midnight crossing. When he paid his toll, I followed. I kept my distance, watching his dark form ahead. He rode for perhaps half a mile. Then he stopped. In the middle of the road, just stopped. I stopped as well, watching. He sat there on his horse, motionless. I waited. After several minutes, I called out, asked if he needed assistance. He turned his horse around, began riding back towards me, toward the bridge. I turned my own horse, rode back quickly. I reached the bridge first. I looked back. He was gone, vanished from the road. Then I heard hoofbeats behind me. He was on the bridge, riding from the opposite direction, as if he had never left, as if he had just arrived from the north. He paid his toll again. Another ice-cold coin. He crossed the bridge. He vanished into the southern darkness. I cannot explain this. The same rider every midnight, coming from the north, crossing south, paying his toll, then disappearing, perhaps riding back to repeat his journey the next night, forever crossing this bridge, forever travelling towards some destination he never reaches. Richard Blackwood, toll keeper, Stone Bridge, Cumberland, 28th of September, 1718. Archivist's note, Dr. Nathaniel Ashcroft. Bridge records note, highwayman Robert Graves, shot on Bridge 1715, died attempting to flee pursuing militia. Graves was known for riding at night. Bridge demolished 1840, replaced with modern structure. No reports of midnight riders on current bridge. End of file. Proceeding to next recovered document. Case file, NOA 1462 or W classification, midwife's account. Date of statement, 19th February 1462. Location, village of Thornbury, Gloucestershire, England. Author, Dame Agnes Cooper. Midwife account of the crying in the night eye. Dame Agnes Cooper, midwife of Thornbury village. Do give account of sounds that plague our village. Every night for the past 2 months. We hear a baby crying. The sound comes from the old mill. The mill has stood empty since Miller Graves passed 5 years ago. No one has worked there since. The water wheel is broken. The building falls into ruin. But the crying comes from within. It begins at dusk. A thin, high wailing, the unmistakable sound of a newborn child, crying for its mother, crying to be fed, crying from hunger or cold or pain. It continues through the night, sometimes loud, sometimes soft, but never stopping. At dawn, the crying ceases. The mill is silent until the next evening. I went to investigate. I am a midwife. I have delivered every child in this village for 30 years. I know the sound of a baby's cry. I took my lamp and walked to the mill. The crying was loud as I approached, coming from the upper floor, from the miller's old quarters. I climbed the stairs. The steps creaked beneath my feet. The crying grew louder. I reached the top. The miller's room stood empty. No furniture, no bedding, no belongings. Just bare walls and dusty floors. But the crying filled the space, loud and desperate, right beside me. I held up my lamp. I turned in a circle. No child, no cradle, nothing. The crying continued. I called out, "Where are you, little one?" The crying stopped. Instant silence. I waited. Then I heard breathing. Tiny infant breaths, fast and light, coming from the corner. I walked toward the sound. The corner was empty, but I heard the breathing. I knelt down, reached out my hand. The air was cold, colder than winter. My hand touched something small and soft, like touching a baby wrapped in cloth. but I saw nothing. My hand passed through emptiness, yet I felt the form, the small body, the wrapped limbs, an invisible child. The crying started again, right beneath my hand. I jerked back, stood up. The crying grew louder, angry now, screaming. I fled down the stairs. The crying followed me, out into the yard, to the road, to the edge of the village. Finally, it faded. But at dusk, it began again. From the mill. The villagers are frightened. They will not go near the old mill. Some say Miller Graves had a daughter. She was with child out of wedlock. He was shamed. He sent her away. She was never seen again. Some say she died on the road. She and her unborn child. Now the child cries, searching for the mother who never held it, crying in the place where its grandfather cast them out. Agnes Cooper, midwife, village of Thornbury, Gloucestershire, 19th February 1462. Archivist. Note: Dr. Nathaniel Ashcroft Mill, demolished 1520. Village records show no daughter registered to Miller Graves. However, parish records often omitted illegitimate births and unfortunate outcomes. Site remains vacant. Local folklore still includes references to the Crying Mill. No modern accounts of paranormal activity. End of file. Proceeding to next recovered document. Case file NOA 1594T. Classification: Railway Inspector's Report. Date of statement: 7th July 1594. Location: Coaching Road, Lancashire, England. Author: Thomas Hartley, Road Inspector. Report on the Phantom Coach Y. Thomas Hartley, Inspector of the Coaching Road between Manchester and Lancaster. Do report on sightings of an unusual coach. Travellers have reported seeing a black coach on the road at night, always between the hours of midnight and 1 o'clock, always travelling at high speed, always heading north. The coach appears without warning. No sound of hoofbeats preceding it, no sound of wheels on the road. It simply appears behind travellers, moving fast. They hear it coming only when it is nearly upon them. A rushing sound like wind. They step aside quickly. The coach passes. Black wood, black horses, black driver. No lights, no lanterns. It rushes past in the darkness. Then it is gone, vanishing ahead on the road, disappearing into nothing. I dismiss these reports as fancy. Night travellers seeing shadows and imagining things. The road can play tricks in darkness. But too many travellers told the same story. Merchants I know to be sensible men, all describing the same black coach. I decided to keep watch myself. I stationed myself on the road one midnight, on a clear night with a full moon. I could see well in the moonlight. The road stretched empty in both directions. I waited. At midnight exactly, I heard it, the rushing sound, like wind through trees. But there were no trees nearby. The sound grew louder, coming from the south. I turned to look. The black coach appeared, perhaps 100 yards away, racing toward me at tremendous speed. I stepped off the road quickly, pressed myself against the stone wall. The coach passed. 6 black horses, foaming at their mouths, eyes wild with terror. A driver in black on the box. His face was a skull, just bone and hollow eyes. He did not turn his head as he passed, did not acknowledge my presence. The coach itself was ornate, expensive woodwork, but covered in dirt, as if it had travelled muddy roads. The windows were dark. I could not see inside, but I felt something watching from within, something cold, something hungry, The coach passed in seconds. Racing north, I watched it disappear. It did not fade gradually. It simply ceased to exist. Between one moment and the next. There 1 second. Gone the next. I stood on that road for an hour after, unable to move, unable to process what I witnessed. I made inquiries the next day, asking about coaches that travel this road at night. No coaching company runs at midnight. No private coach travels at such hours. The innkeeper told me the story. 50 years ago, a nobleman's coach raced north on this road, fleeing from accusers. The nobleman had committed terrible crimes. His victims called for justice. He fled under cover of darkness. His driver whipped the horses mercilessly, pushing them beyond endurance. The coach overturned at speed. All inside were lost. The nobleman, his servant, the driver, all dead on the road. Now they race still fleeing, still trying to escape, never reaching their destination, forever trapped on this road. Thomas Hartley, Road Inspector, Lancashire. 7th July, 1594 Archivist's Note. Dr. Nathaniel Ashcroft. Coaching road replaced by modern A6 highway. Reports of black coach continued into 18th century before ceasing. No documented fatalities matched described accident in records. However, early road accident records notoriously incomplete. Modern drivers occasionally report brief vision of a horse-drawn vehicle before it vanishes. End of file. Proceeding to next recovered document. Case file. NOA 1847H. Classifications. Governess's private journal. Date of statement, 11th October, 1847. Location, Ashwood Hall, Hampshire, England. Author, Miss Elizabeth Thorne, Governess Journal entry. The children's laughter. I, Elizabeth Thorne, governess at Ashwood Hall. Do record disturbing events concerning my young charges. I was hired 3 months ago to teach the Ashwood children. 2 daughters, ages 8 and 10. Margaret and Catherine. Bright girls, well-mannered, eager to learn. Their mother passed 2 years ago. Their father travels frequently on business. I am responsible for their education and care. We study in the schoolroom each morning. Reading, writing, arithmetic, history. The girls are attentive students, but something is wrong. They speak to someone I cannot see. During lessons, they will suddenly look toward the corner, smile and nod, as if acknowledging another person. I ask who they see. They say, "Our friend." I ask the friend's name. They giggle and whisper to each other. They will not tell me. At first, I thought it childish imagination, an invisible companion. Many children create such friends, but both girls see the same thing. In the same location, they describe the friend identically, a girl about their age, with dark hair and a white dress, who stands in the corner and watches our lessons. I see nothing in that corner, just empty space. But the girls insist she is there. Yesterday, I heard them talking in their bedroom, late at night, well past their bedtime. I went to quiet them. I opened the door. 3 voices stopped speaking, but only 2 children sat in the room. Margaret and Catherine in their beds. "Who else is here?" I asked. They looked at each other. Then Margaret pointed to the space between their beds. "She's standing right there." I saw nothing. Empty floor. "Tell her to leave," I said. "We can't," Catherine whispered. "Why not?" "She lives here. We don't." I felt cold despite the fire burning in their hearth. "What do you mean?" "She died here," Margaret said quietly, "a long time ago. She says we're the ones visiting. She says we're the guests in her house. I sent them to sleep, closed their door, but I heard the third voice resume speaking, soft and musical, a child's voice, coming from their room. I questioned the housekeeper this morning. She confirmed a child died in this house 30 years ago. The previous owner's daughter, age 9. Fever took her. She died in what is now the girl's bedroom. The housekeeper says servants have heard her, playing in empty rooms, laughing in the halls, calling for her mother. But the girls are the first living children in the house since she passed. Perhaps that is why she reveals herself now. She has playmates again. Tonight, I heard all three laughing, the girls in their room, and the other voice, that dead child, laughing with them, playing with them, befriending them. I do not know what to do. The girls are not frightened. They seem happy to have another companion, but I'm terrified. What if the dead child wants them to stay with her forever? Elizabeth Thorne, Governess Ashwood Hall, Hampshire, 11th October, 1847. Archivist's note. Dr. Nathaniel Ashcroft Hall records confirmed child death, 1817. Name listed as Emma Ashwood. Property sold 1860. Current owners report occasional sounds of children playing, but describe it as pleasant, not frightening. Former governess Miss Thorne left position December 1847. Further employment records unknown. End of file. Proceeding to next recovered document. Case file NOA 1625C. Classification: Prison Chaplain's Confession. Date of statement: 24th May, 1625. Location: Marshalsea Prison, London, England. Author: Chaplain William Frost. Confession of Chaplain Frost. Oh, William Frost, Chaplain of Marshalsea Prison, do make confession of what I have witnessed. I have served this prison for 6 years. I provide spiritual comfort to the imprisoned. I pray with those who seek God's mercy. I attend those who face execution. It is difficult work, but necessary work, but I can no longer perform my duties. Something walks the condemned cells. I first saw it 3 weeks ago. I was visiting a prisoner scheduled to hang, a forger, convicted and sentenced. He wanted to confess his sins before facing judgment. We sat in his cell. I heard his confession. I offered prayers for his soul. Then he looked past me. His face went pale. "Who is that?" he whispered. I turned. A figure stood in the corner, tall and thin, wearing a dark robe, hood pulled low over its face. I could not see its features, only shadow where a face should be. I asked who entered the cell. The guard outside said no one had passed. The door remained locked, but the figure stood there, motionless, watching. The prisoner began to weep. "It's come for me," he said. "It's come to take me." I tried to comfort him, told him no one would take him before his lawful execution, but he shook his head. Not the hangman, death itself. The figure moved, glided across the cell. No footsteps, no sound. It came toward the prisoner. He pressed himself against the wall. Screaming, I stood between them. I raised my cross, spoke prayers of protection. The figure stopped. It stood before me. I still could not see its face, just darkness within the hood. But I felt it looking at me, studying me. Then it moved around me, reached for the prisoner. One hand emerged from the robe, long fingers, white as bone. It touched the prisoner's forehead. He went silent, rigid. His eyes stared at nothing. The figure withdrew its hand, turned, glided to the cell door, passed through the locked iron, simply went through it as if it were smoke. Gone. The prisoner was dead, still sitting upright, still staring, but no breath, no heartbeat. Dead 3 days before his scheduled execution. The surgeon said his heart simply stopped. No explanation, but I know what killed him. Since then, I have seen that figure 6 more times, always in the condemned cells, always the night before an execution, always standing in the corner, watching, waiting. And every prisoner who sees it dies before they can be hanged. They all die the same way. Heart simply stops, as if something reaches inside them and turns off their life like snuffing a candle. I cannot continue this work. I cannot watch that figure take them. Cannot stand helpless while death walks these cells. I am leaving this prison, leaving London. I will find a country parish, somewhere quiet, somewhere death does not walk so freely. William Frost, Chaplain, Marshalsea Prison, London, 24th May, 1625. Archivist's note: Dr. Nathaniel Ashcroft, prison records show 7 prisoners died of natural causes, May-June 1625. Unusual cluster in short period. Chaplain Frost resigned June 1625. Marshalsea Prison closed 1842. Similar dark-robed figures appear in death. Folklore across cultures, typically interpreted as psychopomp entities or cultural death personifications. End of file. Proceeding to next recovered document. Case file NOA 1769F. Classification: Sexton's report. Date of statement: 2nd December 1769. Location: St. Michael's Church, Somerset, England. Author: Henry Blackwell, Sexton. Report on the knocking from the crypt. Why? Henry Blackwell, Sexton of St. Michael's Church. Do report on sounds emanating from the church crypt. I have maintained this church for 20 years. I dig the graves. I prepare the crypt. I ring the bells. I light the candles. I know every sound this old church makes. The creak of the timbers, the groan of the roof, the whistle of wind through the eaves. But the knocking is new. It began 1 month ago. A steady tapping sound, coming from beneath the church, from the crypt where we lay the dead. I first heard it during morning service. Tap, 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 slow and rhythmic. I thought perhaps a shutter had come loose, banging in the wind. After service, I searched the church. All shutters secure, all doors fastened. But the tapping continued, louder now, more insistent. Tap, 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 coming from the crypt stairs. I took my lamp and descended. The crypt is old, medieval stonework, vaulted ceiling, stone shelves along the walls holding coffins. Generations of the parish rest here. The tapping was louder below, echoing off the stone. I walked among the coffins, trying to locate the source. The sound seemed to come from everywhere at once. Tap, tap, tap. Then I realized it came from inside one of the coffins. I stood very still, listening, identifying which one. The tapping came from the newest coffin, placed here just 3 weeks ago. Old Mr. Graves, the butcher, died peacefully in his sleep. I attended his burial myself. He was definitely deceased. The doctor confirmed it. But now something knocked inside his coffin. Tap, tap, tap. I backed away slowly, climbed the stairs, closed and locked the crypt door. But I still hear the tapping. During services, during quiet hours, during night watches. Tap, tap, tap. Never stopping, never changing rhythm. I told the vicar. He dismissed my concerns, said it was wood expanding and contracting, changes in temperature, natural sounds. But I know what I hear. Last night, I returned to the crypt. I had to know for certain. I took tools to open the coffin. My hands shook as I approached it. The tapping grew louder as I drew near, faster, more urgent. I reached for the coffin lid. The tapping stopped. Sudden silence. I waited. Nothing. I began to pry at the lid. The tapping resumed, right beneath my hands, frantic now, desperate. Tap, 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 tap. I dropped my tools and ran. Up the stairs, out of the crypt. I locked the door behind me. I will not open that coffin. I will not see what makes that sound. Some things are better left unknown. But the tapping continues. Every hour, every day. Tap, tap, tap. Mr. Graves knocking from within his coffin, trying to tell us something, or trying to get out. Henry Blackwell, Sexton St. Michael's Church, Somerset 2nd. December 1769. Archivist Note. Dr. Nathaniel Ashcroft, phenomenon of coffin sounds documented in pre-modern burial contexts, often attributed to decomposition gases. However, rhythmic tapping is unusual. Church records show Graves' coffin relocated to Family Vault 1770. No explanation given for relocation. Current crypt shows no unusual acoustics or sounds. End of file. Proceeding to next recovered document. Case file NOA 1534 N. Classification Lighthouse Keeper's final entry. Date of statement 19th December 1534. Location Eddystone Rocks, Cornwall, England. Author Robert Whitmore. Lighthouse Keeper. Final journal entry Robert Whitmore, Keeper of the Eddystone Light. Do make what may be my final entry. The supply boat comes in 4 days. I pray I survive until then. Something is in the lighthouse with me. I am alone on this rock. The nearest land is 12 miles distant. It is only me, the light, and the sea. Or it should be. But I am not alone. It began 1 week ago. I woke in the night to footsteps, climbing the tower stairs. Slow, heavy steps, coming up from below, ascending toward my quarters. I called out. No answer, just the footsteps continuing. Closer now. I barred my door. The footsteps reached my landing. They stopped outside my door. I heard breathing, deep and ragged. The door handle turned slowly, testing the lock. I held my breath. After several minutes, the footsteps descended, back down the tower. In the morning, I searched the lighthouse, every level, every room. No one here but me. The door at the base remains locked from inside. No way for anyone to enter, but the footsteps return each night, always at midnight, always climbing the tower, always stopping at my door. Last night was worse. The footsteps climbed as usual. They stopped at my door. Then the knocking began. Loud, thunderous knocking, shaking the door in its frame. I pressed myself against the far wall. The knocking grew more violent, desperate, angry. Then I heard the voice. Let me in. Deep and hollow, not quite human. Let me in. Over and over. The knocking continued. The door began to splinter. I grabbed the fire poker, ready to defend myself. The door split down the middle, but nothing came through. The knocking stopped. The voice ceased. Silence. I waited until dawn. When the sun rose, I examined the door. No damage, no splinters, no marks. Completely intact. But I heard it break. I heard the wood splitting. Tonight will be the 5th night. I do not know if I can endure another. Whatever walks this tower wants inside my quarters. It wants to reach me. Each night, it grows stronger. more determined. The door will not hold much longer. I have moved all furniture against it. I have blessed it with prayers, but I fear that will not be enough. If the supply boat finds this journal, if I am not here to greet them, please know that something dwells on Eddystone rocks, something that should not exist, something that climbs in the darkness and knocks and demands to be let in. Robert Whitmore, Lighthouse Keeper, Eddystone Light, Cornwall, 19th December, 1534. Archivist's note: Dr. Nathaniel Ashcroft, supply boat found lighthouse abandoned, December 23rd, 1534. Door barricaded from inside. No sign of Keeper Whitmore. Body never recovered. Lighthouse destroyed in storm, 1703. Modern lighthouse built on same rocks. Keepers report no unusual phenomena. Automation completed 1982. End of file. Proceeding to next recovered document. Case file NOA 1495G. Classification: Theatre Manager's Account. Date of statement: 26th August 1495. Location: The Rose Theatre, Coventry, England. Author: Mr. Edmund Hartley, Theatre Manager. Account of the performance in the empty theatre. I, Edmund Hartley, Manager of the Rose Theatre, do give account of events that occur after our evening performances end. We close the theatre at 11 o'clock each night. The actors depart. The audience has long since gone home. I lock the doors myself. I check every room before leaving. The theatre is empty. I am certain of this. But someone remains behind. I first noticed it 1 month ago. I was in my office, completing the evening's accounts. The theatre was quiet and dark. Then I heard applause, coming from the auditorium. One person clapping. Slow, steady applause. I went to investigate. The auditorium was empty. All seats vacant. The stage bare. But the clapping continued. It came from the center of the house, from the middle rows, where the best seats are located. I held up my lamp. The seats were empty, but the applause went on. I called out, asked who was there. The clapping stopped immediately. Silence. I waited. Then I heard movement. Footsteps on the wooden floor. Walking up the aisle toward the exit. I saw no one, but I heard the steps clearly. The creak of floorboards under weight. The footsteps passed within 3 feet of me. I felt a coldness as they went by. The exit door opened. I saw it swing wide, then close again. But no one was there. This has happened every night since. After we close, after I lock the doors, the applause begins. Always from the same section of seats. Always the same slow, measured clapping. Sometimes I hear laughter, a man's laughter, deep and appreciative, as if watching a fine comedy, but the stage is dark and empty. Last week, I brought a fellow manager to witness it, Mr. Pemberton from the Swan Theatre. He is a practical man, not given to fancy. We sat in my office after closing, waiting. At midnight, the applause began. Mr. Pemberton heard it clearly. We went to the auditorium together. The clapping came from the center seats. We approached slowly, our lamps held high. The seats were empty, but the applause continued. Then we saw something. A depression in one of the seat cushions, as if someone sat there, the weight of a body pressing down, but no body visible. We watched as the depression deepened, someone leaning forward, watching an invisible performance. The applause grew louder, more enthusiastic. Then the laughter came, that deep, appreciative laugh, coming from the empty seat. Mr. Pemberton backed away. He would not stay longer. We left the theatre immediately. I have made inquiries about the theatre's history. 15 years ago, a nobleman attended every performance here. He was our most loyal patron, Lord Ashford. He sat into those same centre seats. He attended 3 times each week. He loved the theatre above all else. He died in his sleep one night. The doctor said his heart simply stopped. But perhaps his love for the theatre was too strong. Perhaps death could not keep him away. Now he returns every night. After the living have gone, he watches performances only he can see. On a stage that stands empty, he applauds actors who are not there. He laughs at comedies no one else witnesses. Lord Ashford keeps his seat, even in death. Still the theatre's most loyal patron. Edmund Hartley, theatre manager, the Rose Theatre, Coventry. 26th August, 1495 Archivist's note, Dr. Nathaniel Ashcroft. Theatre records confirm Lord Ashford's patronage, 1478-1480. The Rose Theatre burned 1510, rebuilt on different site. Original location, now commercial buildings. No modern reports of phantom applause, though several theatres nationwide report similar phenomena attributed to devoted patrons. End of file. Proceeding to next recovered document. Case file NOA 1747S. Classification Apothecary's Journal. Date of statement 4th November 1747. Location High Street, Winchester, England. Author Mr. Josiah Webb. Apothecary Journal entry. The prescription here. Josiah Webb, Apothecary of Winchester. Do record an unusual customer who visits my shop. She appears every Tuesday at precisely 3 o'clock. She has done so for 8 weeks now. A woman of middle years, well dressed in clothing from an earlier time, perhaps 20 years out of fashion. She enters my shop without opening the door. I look up from my work. She is simply there. Standing before the counter, she never speaks. She places a piece of paper on the counter, a prescription, written in Latin. The handwriting is old-fashioned. The paper is yellowed with age. The prescription calls for various herbs and tinctures for the treatment of fever. I prepare the mixture as specified. It takes perhaps 10 minutes. She waits patiently, never moving, never speaking. When I finish, I place the bottle on the counter. I tell her the price. She places coins on the counter. Old coins, from the previous century. She takes the bottle, turns, and walks through the closed door, simply passes through the wood as if it were air, gone. The coins remain on the counter. By the next morning they have turned to dust. This happened the first 3 times. Now I do not accept payment. I simply give her the medicine. She takes it without acknowledgement and leaves through the closed door. Last Tuesday, I tried to speak with her. I asked who the medicine was for. She did not respond, did not even look at me. I asked her name. Nothing. I reached out to touch her arm. My hand passed through her, through empty air. She is not solid, not truly there. Yet I can see her clearly. Yet she places the prescription on my counter, a physical piece of paper, real and tangible, yet written by someone long dead. I examined the prescription carefully. The physician's name at the bottom, Dr. Marcus Henley. I asked the town clerk about this doctor. Dr. Henley practiced in Winchester 40 years ago. He died in 1705. The prescription is genuine, written in Dr. Henley's hand, for a patient who came to him with fever. But who is the patient? Who is this woman buying medicine for? I decided to follow her. Last Tuesday, when she left my shop, I followed. She walked down High Street. Her form was translucent in the afternoon sun. I could see through her to the buildings beyond. She turned into Church Lane, walked to a house at the end, a house I recognized, the old Henley residence, where Dr. Henley lived and worked. She went to the front door, passed through it. I knocked on the door. An elderly woman answered. I asked about previous occupants. She said Dr. Henley had lived there. He had a daughter who never married. She cared for her father in his old age. After his death, she remained in the house. She died of fever in 1708. She had nursed her father through many illnesses. When her own fever came, she had no one to care for her, no one to fetch medicine from the apothecary. She died alone in that house. Perhaps now she seeks the medicine she never received, week after week, forever trying to cure a fever that took her years ago. I will continue to prepare her prescription. It brings her no relief, but I cannot refuse. Josiah Webb, Apothecary, Winchester 4th November, 1747. Archivists, note, Dr. Nathaniel Ashcroft. Town records verified Dr. Henley and daughter Eleanor. Henley's deaths as described. Apothecary shop demolished 1820. No modern businesses report similar phenomena. Phenomenon suggests residual haunting, repeated action from life continuing after death. End of file. Proceeding to next recovered document. Case file. NOA1619B. Classification. Blacksmith statement. Date of statement. 12th April, 1619. Location. Village of Hartwell, Oxfordshire, England. Author. Thomas Ironwood. Blacksmith statement regarding the forge fire. I. Thomas Ironwood, blacksmith of Hartwell Village. Do give statement regarding my forge. I have worked this forge for 30 years. My father worked it before me, his father before him. 3 generations of Ironwood blacksmiths. The forge has always burned true, hot and steady, perfect for shaping iron. But something has changed. The fire will not stay cold, even when I bank it at night, even when I use no coal, even when I pour water on the embers. By morning, the fire burns again, hot and bright, as if freshly stoked. I thought perhaps embers remained, hidden deep in the ash, catching again overnight. But I have cleared the forge completely, removed then every piece of coal, every bit of ash, left it cold and empty. By morning, fire burns in it again, a full roaring fire, with no fuel, with no source, just flames. Last week, I stayed awake all night, watching the forge. I cleaned it completely at dusk. Not even a spark remained. The forge sat cold and dark. I waited. At midnight, I heard the bellows, whooshing as they pumped air, but I was not touching them. They moved by themselves, back and forth, pumping steadily. I stood and watched. The bellows continued their rhythm. Then fire appeared in the forge. Small flames at first, growing larger, fed by the phantom bellows. Within minutes, the fire blazed, hot enough to work iron, hot enough to forge steel, but nothing fueled it. I approached slowly, looked into the flames. I saw a face, a man's face, formed in the fire itself, made of flames and smoke. The features were familiar. I recognized him, my grandfather, dead these 20 years. His face looked out at me from the fire. His eyes were bright as coals. His mouth moved, shaping words in the flames. But I heard no sound, only the roar of the fire, only the whoosh of the bellows. I stepped back. The face faded, dissolving back into the flames, but the fire continued burning, all through the night. In the morning, I examined the forge. No coal consumed, no wood burned. The forge was empty except for the flames that needed no fuel. I have stopped trying to extinguish it. The fire will burn whether I want it to or not. My grandfather loved this forge. He worked it for 50 years. He died at the anvil, hammer in hand. His heart gave out while shaping a horseshoe. Perhaps he cannot rest. Perhaps he continues his work, keeping the fire burning, keeping the forge ready, even though his hands can no longer hold the hammer, even though his eyes can no longer see the metal. He keeps his fire burning, now and forever. Thomas Ironwood, Blacksmith Village of Hartwell, Oxfordshire, 12th April, 1619. Archivist's note. Dr. Nathaniel Ashcroft Village. Records confirm blacksmith dynasty. Original forge building collapsed, 1720, rebuilt. Modern forge operates at location. Owner reports fire requires normal fuel. No paranormal phenomena documented. Possible residual energy associated with dedicated craftsmen documented in various trade settings. End of file. Proceeding to next recovered document. Case file NOA1583W. Classification Magistrates Court Record. Date of statement 29th July 1583. Location Sessions House, Bristol, England. Author Magistrate Sir Robert Blackwell. Court record. The witness who would not leave I, Sir Robert Blackwell, Magistrate of Bristol, do record events concerning a witness in my courtroom. We held a trial 3 months past. A merchant accused of fraud. Multiple witnesses testified against him. Among them, a clerk named William Foster. Foster gave clear testimony. He had seen the merchant falsify his accounts. He had witnessed the deception firsthand. His testimony was damning. The merchant was convicted, sentenced to imprisonment and forfeiture of property. Foster left the court after testifying. I assumed that was the end of his involvement, but Foster returned, every day since. He sits in the public gallery during court sessions, in the same seat he occupied during the fraud trial, always watching the proceedings, always silent. I thought nothing of it at first. Citizens often observe court sessions. It is their right. But Foster never leaves that seat. I have held court every day for 3 months. Foster has been present for every session. He arrives before I do. He remains after I depart, never moving from that seat. Yesterday, I inquired about him. I sent my clerk to ask Foster why he attended court so faithfully. My clerk returned confused. He said Foster was not in the gallery, but I could see Foster clearly, sitting in his usual seat. I pointed him out. My clerk looked where I indicated. He saw no one. The seat was empty, he insisted. But Foster sat right there. I could see him plainly. I called for the bailiff, asked him to remove Foster from the court. The bailiff looked at the gallery. He too saw no one. Yet Foster sat there, meeting my eyes. He smiled slightly. Then I realized the truth. I consulted the parish records this morning. William Foster died 2 months ago, 1 week after the trial ended. He was found in his lodgings. His heart had stopped in his sleep. Yet he has attended court every day since, still watching justice being served, still occupying his seat in the gallery, still bearing witness, though only I can see him. I do not know why I alone can see him. Perhaps because I am the magistrate. Perhaps because I preside over the court he continues to attend. But he is there, every session, watching, waiting. For what, I do not know. Today, I tried speaking to him. I addressed him directly from the bench. The courtroom fell silent. Everyone stared at me. They thought I had lost my senses, speaking to an empty seat. But Foster heard me. He stood, bowed respectfully, and faded, simply dissolved into nothing. The seat was empty, finally empty. Perhaps he only needed acknowledgement. Perhaps he only needed to be seen. Now he has been recognized. Now he can rest. But I will never forget the witness who loved justice so much that even death could not keep him from court. Sir Robert Blackwell, Magistrate Sessions House, Bristol, 29th of July, 1583. Archivist's note. Dr. Nathaniel Ashcroft Court. Records verify Foster's testimony and subsequent death. Sessions House demolished 1820, replaced by modern Crown Court. Judges occasionally report feeling observed during proceedings, but no visual phenomena documented in recent times. Foster's death certificate lists cause as heart failure. End of file. Proceeding to next recovered document. Case file NOA 1795 M. Classification. Head Gardener's report. Date of statement 16th May 1795. Location Rosewood Estate, Kent, England. Author Samuel Thorne, Head Gardener. Report on the figure in the rose garden. I, Samuel Thorne, Head Gardener of Rosewood Estate, do report on a figure that appears in the rose garden. I have tended these gardens for 15 years. I know every plant, every path, every hidden corner. The rose garden is my greatest achievement. 300 rose bushes, every colour imaginable. They bloom from June through September. A sight that draws visitors from across the county. But someone else walks the garden, someone who should not be there. I see her in the early morning, when the mist still hangs low over the grounds. A woman in a white gown. She walks among the roses, moving slowly from bush to bush. She seems to examine each bloom, leaning close, as if to smell their fragrance. The first time I saw her, I thought her a guest from the house, come out early to enjoy the garden. I approached to greet her. She did not acknowledge me. I called out. She continued walking, moving deeper into the garden. I followed. She turned down a path between the rose beds. I was only moments behind her, but when I rounded the corner, she was gone, simply vanished. The path was empty, no place she could have hidden, no gate she could have passed through, just empty path and roses. This has happened every morning for 2 weeks, always at dawn, always when the mist is thick. She appears among the roses. She walks her route. She examines the blooms. Then she vanishes when I approach. Yesterday, I rose even earlier. I positioned myself in the garden before dawn, hidden behind the garden shed, waiting to see where she came from. The mist grew thick as the sun rose. Then she appeared, not walking from anywhere, simply there, standing among the roses. One moment empty garden. The next moment she stood there, materialized from the mist itself. I watched as she began her walk. She moved with purpose, as if following a familiar route. She stopped at certain bushes, the red roses specifically. She reached out to touch them. Her fingers passed through the blooms, through the petals, like touching smoke. She could not feel them, could not hold them, but she tried, over and over, reaching for the roses, her hands passing through each time. I saw her face clearly, young and beautiful, but impossibly sad. Tears ran down her cheeks. She wept silently as she walked, grieving for roses she could no longer touch. I asked Lord Pemberton about her. He grew quiet. Then he told me. His daughter, Catherine. She died 5 years ago. Fever took her at age 19. She loved the rose garden above all else. She walked it every morning, tending the roses herself. She made me promise to keep the garden beautiful, to maintain it in her memory. I have kept that promise. The roses flourish under my care, but Catherine still walks among them, still trying to touch the blooms she loved, still weeping for the beauty she can see but never feel. Samuel Thorne, head gardener, Rosewood Estate, Kent, 16th May, 1795. Archivist's note. Dr. Nathaniel Ashcroft, estate records confirm Catherine Pemberton's death, 1790, age 19. Rose garden remains partially intact, now public park. Visitors occasionally report woman in white near rosebeds in early morning mist. Park rangers attribute this to atmospheric conditions creating optical illusions. End of file. Proceeding to next recovered document. Case file NOA1437K. Classification Baker's account. Date of statement 8th January 1437. Location Market Street, Norwich, England. Author Geoffrey Mills, Baker. Account of the knocking at the bakehouse door. I, Geoffrey Mills, Baker of Norwich. Do give account of events at my bakehouse. I rise at 3 o'clock each morning. I must prepare the bread before the market opens. The ovens must be lit. The dough must be kneaded and shaped. By dawn, the first loaves are baking. By 6 o'clock, the bread is ready for sale. I have kept this schedule for 20 years. But now I am not alone in the dark hours. Someone knocks at my door every morning. At precisely 4 o'clock. 3 sharp knocks. I answer immediately. I think perhaps a customer needs bread urgently, but no one is there. The street is empty, dark and silent. I return to my work. 5 minutes later, the knocking comes again. 3 sharp knocks. I open the door more quickly this time. Still no one. This continues throughout the morning. Every 5 or 10 minutes, 3 knocks. No one at the door. It is maddening. I cannot work in peace. I must constantly stop to answer. Last week, I decided not to answer. I would ignore the knocking. I would continue my work. The knocking came at 4 o'clock. 3 sharp knocks. I did not move. I kept kneading my dough. The knocking came again. Louder this time. More insistent. I ignored it. The knocking became violent. Thunderous blows that shook the door. My windows rattled. Flower jars trembled on their shelves. I ran to the door and opened it. The knocking stopped instantly. No one there. But I heard something. A voice. Faint and distant. Please, I am so hungry. I looked up and down the street. Empty. But the voice came again. Please, just a small piece of bread. I stepped outside. The voice seemed to come from everywhere, from the air itself. I am so hungry, please help me. I spoke to the emptiness. Who are you? Where are you? The voice answered. I am here, at your door, as I was before. There is no one here. I am here. Can you not see me? I saw nothing. just empty street and darkness. But the voice was desperate, pleading. I went inside. I took a fresh loaf of bread, still warm from the oven. I brought it outside. I held it up. "Here is bread. Take it if you need it." The loaf was pulled from my hands. By invisible fingers, I felt them grip the bread, felt it pulled away, but I saw nothing take it. The bread floated in the air, then pieces tore away, consumed by an invisible mouth. I watched in horror. The loaf was eaten before my eyes, by someone I could not see. When the bread was gone, the voice spoke again. "Thank you. Bless you for your kindness." Then silence. The presence was gone. The knocking has not returned since that morning, but I leave bread outside my door now. Every morning at 4 o'clock, one fresh loaf. By 5 o'clock, it is gone, eaten by the hungry ghost who haunts my bakehouse. Geoffrey Mills, Baker Market Street, Norwich, 8th of January 1437. Archivist's note: Dr. Nathaniel Ashcroft, medieval Norwich, suffered periodic famines. Death records from 1430s show elevated mortality from starvation. Bakehouse location now commercial building. No modern reports of knocking, though tradition of leaving food for the poor has deep roots in Norwich culture. End of file. Proceeding to next recovered document. Case file NOA 1824D. Classification: Innkeeper's statement. Date of statement: 3rd March 1824. Location: The Golden Heart, Liverpool, England. Author: Mr. Arthur Waverley. Innkeeper. Statement regarding the cellar: I, Arthur Waverley, keeper of the Golden Heart Inn, do give statement regarding my wine cellar. The cellar runs beneath the entire inn. Stone vaults from the 14th century, cool and dark, perfect for storing wine and ale. I go down 3 times daily to fetch bottles for the tap room, to check the temperature, to ensure everything is in order. But the cellar is never empty. Someone else is always there, standing in the shadows, watching. I first saw him 1 month ago. I descended the stairs with my lamp. I walked to the wine racks along the far wall. I felt eyes upon me, that sensation of being observed. I turned. A man stood near the stairs. In the darkness beyond my lamplight, I could see only his outline, tall and thin, wearing what appeared to be old-fashioned clothing. I called out, asked what he was doing in my cellar. He did not respond, did not move, just stood there. I walked toward him, holding my lamp high to see better. As the light reached him, he was gone, simply vanished. The space where he stood was empty. I searched the entire cellar, every vault, every corner. No one there. All the exits were locked from above. He could not have left. Yet he was gone. Since then, I see him every time I enter the cellar, always in the same location, near the stairs, always watching, never moving, never speaking. I have grown accustomed to his presence. I simply acknowledge him and go about my business. He does nothing. He merely observes. Last night, I was fetching wine for a private dinner. I selected several bottles from the rack. As I turned to leave, he was closer, much closer than usual, standing directly in my path. I stopped. We were only 3 feet apart. I could see his face in my lamplight, pale and gaunt, eyes hollow and dark, mouth slightly open, as if struggling to speak. He raised one hand slowly, pointing at the wall behind me. I turned to look. The wall appeared normal, old stone, covered in centuries of dust. I looked back at the man. He was gone again. But I walked to the wall he had indicated. I examined it closely by lamplight. The mortar between certain stones was different, newer than the rest, as if the wall had been repaired or rebuilt. I fetched tools and began to chip away at the mortar. It crumbled easily, too easily. Behind the stones, I found a hollow space, a small cavity in the wall. Inside lay bones, human bones, a skeleton curled in that tiny space. Someone had been walled up in my cellar, buried alive in the stone. I summoned the constable immediately. They removed the remains. The coroner examined them. The bones were centuries old, likely from the time the cellar was built. No way to determine identity or cause of death. They took the remains for proper burial. Since that night, the cellar has been empty. The man no longer appears. Whatever kept him there has been released. He showed me where he rested. Now he can finally leave. Arthur Waverley, innkeeper, The Golden Heart, Liverpool, 3rd March 1824. Archivist note. This note, Dr. Nathaniel Ashcroft Constabulary records confirm skeletal remains discovered in cellar March 1824. Identity never established. Remains buried in paupers section of parish cemetery. In demolished 1890. Medieval practice of walling up victims documented in various European locations during periods of civil unrest. End of file. Proceeding to next recovered document. Case file NOA 1658V. Classification Monk's Testament. Date of statement 11th September 1658. Location Abbey Scriptorium, Durham, England. Author Brother Marcus. Scribe Testament of the uninvited Scribe Y. Brother Marcus, Scribe of Durham Abbey, do give testament regarding another who works in our scriptorium. Our order maintains a tradition of copying sacred texts. We preserve the words of God for future generations. 5 of us work as scribes. We labor in silence, each at his own desk, copying manuscripts with careful precision. The work requires absolute concentration. Any error ruins the page. We must begin again. But concentration has become impossible. 1 month ago, a 6th desk appeared in the scriptorium. None of us brought it. None of us ordered it placed there. One morning, it was simply there. An old desk, dark wood, worn smooth by centuries of use. The abbot asked who requested the additional desk. None of us had. He ordered it removed. We carried it to the storage room. The next morning, it was back in the scriptorium, in exactly the same position. We removed it again. Again, it returned. After the 3rd time, the abbot declared we should leave it. Perhaps someone needed it, and we should not question. The desk has remained, but now someone sits at it. I do not see him arrive. I never see him leave. But during our working hours, he is there, hunched over the desk, a quill in his hand, writing on parchment. He wears the robes of our order, but they are old, from a century past at least. His hood is pulled low. I cannot see his face. He works in complete silence, as do we all. But something is wrong. The sound of his quill is too loud, scratching harshly on the parchment. The sound grates on my nerves, makes concentration difficult. I have tried to ignore it, to focus on my own work, but the scratching persists, endless scratching. I glanced at Brother Thomas yesterday. He was weeping silently at his desk, tears running down his face, his hands shaking as he tried to write. I understood. The scratching was affecting him too. That terrible, relentless sound. I decided to approach the 6th desk, to ask this brother to work more quietly. I stood and walked toward him. He did not acknowledge my approach, just kept writing. I stood beside his desk. His quill moved frantically across the parchment, writing the same word, over and over, covering the entire page. The same word repeated hundreds of times. Silentium. Silence, in Latin, written again and again. His hand never stopped moving, never paused, never tired. I spoke to him. "Brother, what do you write?" He did not respond, did not look up, just kept writing. Silentium, silentium, silentium. I reached out to touch his shoulder. My hand passed through him, through his robes, through empty air. He was not solid, not really there, yet his quill scratched real marks on real parchment. I stepped back. He continued writing, that horrible scratching sound filling the scriptorium. I told the abbot. He came to observe. He saw the figure at the desk. He blessed the scriptorium with holy water. He commanded the spirit to depart. The figure kept writing, ignoring the blessing, ignoring the command. Silentium, over and over. The abbot has closed the scriptorium. We work in our cells now, but I hear the scratching still, through the walls, through the doors, that quill moving eternally, writing the word for silence, while the sound of it drives us mad. Brother Marcus, Scribe Durham Abbey, 11th September 1658. Archivist Sote. Note: Dr. Nathaniel Ashcroft, Abbey, records indicate scriptorium closed. 1658, no reason given. Scriptorium, renovated. 1670, reopened. No modern reports of phenomena. Medieval monastic rules required absolute silence with harsh penalties for violations. Obsessive behavior related to rule-breaking occasionally documented in monastic settings. End of file. Proceeding to next recovered document. Case file. NOA1516P. Classification. Physician's case notes. Date of statement. 27th April, 1516. Location, private practice, Bath, England. Author, Dr. Edward Blackwood. Case notes. The patient who does not age. I, Dr. Edward Blackwood, physician of Bath, do record notes on a particular patient. She first came to me 12 years ago, a woman complaining of headaches and fatigue. She appeared to be in her middle 20s, fair complexion, dark hair, well-spoken. I treated her condition with herbs and rest. She recovered within a fortnight. She returned the following year with a different ailment, a cough that would not cease. I treated her successfully. She has returned every year since. Various minor complaints, nothing serious, always easily treated. But I have noticed something impossible. She does not age. 12 years have passed. She should now be in her late 30s, but she appears exactly as she did when we first met. The same youthful face, the same unblemished skin, no grey in her hair, no lines around her eyes. I am 62 years old now. My hair is white. My hands are gnarled with age. My joints ache each morning. But my patient remains young, unchanged by the passage of time. I mentioned this to her last week, remarked on how well she had maintained her youth. She smiled sadly. "I do not age, doctor." I thought she jested, but her expression was serious, sorrowful even. I asked what she meant. She hesitated. Then she told me. She died 20 years ago. Fever took her. She was 26 years old. She remembered dying, remembered the pain, remembered the darkness closing in. But she woke, in her bed, in her body, alive again, or so it seemed. But she soon realized something was wrong. She did not need food, did not need water, did not need sleep. Her body performed no natural functions. She appeared alive. She walked and talked and breathed, but she was not living, not truly. She was trapped in the moment of her death. Forever 26, forever caught between life and death. She has lived this way for 2 decades, watching friends and family age, watching them die, while she remains unchanged. She cannot die again. She has tried. Her body will not accept death, will not release her. She comes to me hoping I can find something wrong, some disease that might free her, but I find nothing. She is perfectly healthy, for someone who is not alive. I do not know what to tell her. Medicine has no answer for this. She's beyond my ability to help. All I can do is listen and document her impossible existence. She will outlive me. She will outlive everyone she knows. Forever young, forever trapped, forever dying but never dead. Dr. Edward Blackwood, Private Practice, Bath, 27th April, 1516. Archivist's note. Dr. Nathaniel Ashcroft. No verification possible for patient's claimed condition. Dr. Blackwood's notes found in medical archive. Authenticity confirmed. Phenomenon resembles folklore accounts of revenant or undead, but patient exhibited no harmful behavior. Modern medical examination would be necessary to evaluate claim. End of file. Proceeding to next recovered document. Case file NOA 1739L. Classification Clockmaker's Journal. Date of statement 14th December 1739. Location Silver Street, Cambridge, England. Author Mr. Benjamin Hartwell, clockmaker. Journal entry: the clock that runs backward. R. Benjamin Hartwell, clockmaker of Cambridge. Do record events concerning a clock in my workshop. A gentleman brought it to me for repair 6 weeks ago. An old clock, beautifully crafted, German workmanship from the previous century. The mechanism had stopped. The gentleman wanted it restored. It had belonged to his grandfather, a treasured family heirloom. I agreed to undertake the work. The mechanism was complex but sound. Merely needed cleaning and adjustment. I worked on it for 3 days. By the 3rd evening, I had it running perfectly. The pendulum swung smoothly, the gears turned properly, but the hands moved backward, counterclockwise, unwinding time rather than keeping it. I adjusted the mechanism, checked every gear, every spring. Everything was correctly assembled, but still the hands moved backward. I thought perhaps I had installed something incorrectly. I disassembled the entire mechanism, examined each piece carefully, reassembled it with meticulous care. I wound the clock and set it running. Again, the hands moved backward, stubbornly refusing to move forward, refusing to keep time properly. I left it running overnight. Perhaps it needed to settle. In the morning, I found something disturbing. The clock read 8 o'clock, but it was actually 6 o'clock in the morning. The clock had gained time, gained it by running backward, by undoing the hours rather than counting them forward. I stood in my workshop staring at this impossible clock. Then I noticed something else. My workspace looked different. The tools I had used yesterday, the tools I had left scattered on my bench, they were put away, organized neatly in their proper places, but I had not organized them. I had left them out. I was certain of this. Then I saw my project notes. The notes I had written yesterday about the clock repairs. The ink was fading, growing lighter, disappearing from the page, as if the writing had never happened, as if yesterday was being erased. I grabbed the clock, stopped the pendulum. The hands ceased their backward movement. The ink on my notes stopped fading, but damage was done. The last hour had been unwound, removed from time. I have kept the clock stopped since then. I am afraid to let it run, afraid of what it might undo. Yesterday I received a letter from the gentleman who owns the clock. He asked when repairs would be complete. He is eager to have it returned. I wrote back that repairs were impossible, that the clock was beyond fixing, that he should dispose of it, but he insists I return it as is. He says it belonged to his grandfather, a scholar who studied time, who believed time could move in both directions, who believed the past could be revisited. He died trying to prove his theories, died at his desk, with this clock before him, running backward, always backward. I will return the clock tomorrow, but I will include a warning. Do not wind it. Do not set it running. Let it remain forever stopped. Some clocks should never tick. Some mechanisms should never move. This is one of them. Benjamin Hartwell, clockmaker, Silver Street, Cambridge, 14th December, 1739. Archivist's note, Dr. Nathaniel Ashcroft. No record of clock's current location. Gentleman identified as Thomas Whitmore, grandson of physicist Dr. Albert Whitmore, who died 1688. Dr. Whitmore's papers on temporal mechanics considered pseudoscience by contemporaries. Clock's whereabouts unknown after 1739. End of file. Proceeding to next recovered document. Case file. NOA 1482R. Classification. Undertaker's account. Date of statement. 9th October 1482. Location. High Street, York, England. Author. Richard Graves. Undertaker. Account of the corpse that breathes I. Richard Graves, Undertaker of York. Do give account of an unusual situation. A body was brought to me last week. An elderly woman, Mrs. Catherine Marsh. She passed peacefully in her sleep. Her family requested my services for preparation and burial. I received the body on Tuesday morning. I laid her on my preparation table. I began the customary procedures, washing and clothing the deceased. But something was wrong. Her skin was warm, not cold as the dead should be, warm as if blood still flowed. I checked for breath, held a mirror to her mouth. No condensation appeared, no breath. I checked for pulse. At her wrist, at her throat, nothing. No heartbeat. No blood movement. She was dead. The doctor had confirmed it. Her family had seen her pass, yet her body was warm. I proceeded with my work, uncomfortable but determined. As I dressed her in burial clothes, I noticed her chest. It was moving, very slightly, rising and falling, as if breathing. I stopped, watched carefully. Her chest rose, fell, rose again. The movements were small but unmistakable. She appeared to breathe, but she was dead. I am certain of this. I have prepared hundreds of bodies. I know death when I see it. Mrs. Marsh was dead, yet she breathed. I called for my assistant. He confirmed what I saw, the chest rising and falling, but no actual breath. No air moving in or out, just the motion of breathing, without the function. We completed our preparations, placed her in the coffin, but she continued breathing. That slow rise and fall, that terrible mimicry of life. The family came to view her yesterday. I warned them of the phenomenon. They were disturbed but determined to proceed with burial. The funeral is scheduled for tomorrow, but I have a terrible fear. What if she continues breathing in the ground? What if that false life persists? Will she lie in her grave forever? Neither alive nor fully dead, trapped in that coffin, going through the motions of breathing for eternity. I suggested to the family that we wait, that we delay burial. But they refuse. They say she is dead. The breathing is mere reflex, muscle movement, nothing more. But I have never seen such a thing. In 30 years of this profession, I have never seen a corpse breathe. Tomorrow we will bury her. I will seal the coffin myself. I will not look inside again. I cannot bear to see that chest rising, that terrible breathing, that mockery of life. May God forgive me for burying her this way. Richard Graves, Undertaker High Street, York 9th, October 1482. Archivist's note, Dr. Nathaniel Ashcroft. Burial records confirm Catherine Marsh interred October the 10th, 1482. No reports of exhumation or disturbance. Phenomenon possibly related to gas buildup during early decomposition, though rhythmic chest movement is unusual. Fear of premature burial, common in pre-modern eras before reliable death verification. End of file. Proceeding to next recovered document. Case file NOA 1864T. Classification: Music teacher's statement. Date of statement: 22nd November 1864. Location: Private Music Academy, Edinburgh, Scotland. Author: Miss Adelaide Crawford, music instructor. Statement regarding the piano in Studio 7. I, Miss Adelaide Crawford, instructor of pianoforte at MacDonald's Music Academy, do give statement regarding the instrument in Studio 7. The piano is a fine instrument. A Broadwood Grand from London, purchased new 5 years ago. It holds its tune perfectly. The action is smooth and responsive. Students enjoy practicing on it. But the piano plays itself, late at night, after the academy closes, after all students and staff have departed. The piano plays. I first heard it 3 weeks ago. I was working late in my office, preparing lessons for the following day. The academy was empty, or should have been. I heard piano music coming from Studio 7. Someone was playing Beethoven. A sonata I recognized, played with considerable skill. I walked to the studio, opened the door. The piano was playing, the keys depressing as if struck by invisible fingers. But no one sat at the key instrument. No one in the room at all. Just the piano, playing by itself. The music continued. Perfect technique, perfect timing, as if performed by a master. I stood frozen in the doorway, watching the keys move, watching the hammers strike the strings, all on their own. The sonata reached its conclusion. The final notes faded, the keys stilled. Silence. I approached the piano slowly, examined it carefully, looking for wires or mechanical devices, some trick or illusion. I found nothing, just a normal piano, but one that plays itself. Since that night, it happens regularly. Every evening around 10 o'clock, the piano in Studio 7 plays, always classical pieces, Beethoven, Mozart, Bach, played with professional skill. I have brought witnesses. 3 other instructors have heard it. We stand in the hallway, listening to the invisible performance. No one dares enter while it plays. Last night, I worked up the courage. I opened the door during the performance. The playing stopped immediately. The keys stilled. Silence. I waited. Nothing. I closed the door and walked away. Within seconds, the music resumed, as if my presence had interrupted, as if the performer needed privacy. I researched the piano's history. I discovered something troubling. The Broadwood belonged to a pianist before we purchased it, a young man named Thomas Wright. He performed publicly in Edinburgh. Critics praised his interpretations of the classics. He had a promising career ahead, but he died suddenly. An accident. He fell downstairs in his boarding house, broke his neck. He was only 23 years old. The family sold his belongings, including his beloved Broadwood. We purchased it unknowingly. Now Thomas plays it still, keeping his practice schedule, performing for an audience that cannot see him, cannot applaud him, can only listen in the darkness, while his invisible fingers dance across the keys. Adelaide Crawford, music instructor, Private Music Academy, Edinburgh, 22nd November, 1864. Archivist's note: Dr. Nathaniel Ashcroft, Academy Records, confirm Broadwood purchase 1859. Edinburgh newspapers document Thomas Wright's death, May 1859. Piano remained in Academy until 1920 closure. Current location unknown. Similar phenomena reported with instruments owned by deceased musicians, suggesting strong emotional attachment persists beyond death. End of file. Proceeding to next recovered document. Case file NOA1691H. Classification: Astronomer's observations. Date of statement: 5th August, 1691. Location: Royal Observatory, Greenwich, England. Author: Dr. William Hartley, astronomer. Observations of the figure at the telescope. Why Dr. William Hartley, astronomer at the Royal Observatory? Do record observations of an unusual phenomenon. I work primarily at night, observing the stars and planets, recording their positions with precision. The observatory is quiet during night hours. Only myself and occasionally an assistant. We work in silence, focused on the heavens above, but someone else uses the secondary telescope. I first noticed him 2 months ago. I was making observations through the primary telescope, recording my findings. I glanced across the observation room. A figure stood at the secondary telescope, bent over the eyepiece, studying the sky. I called out, asked who had entered. The figure did not respond, did not move, just remained focused on the telescope. I walked toward him. He wore old-fashioned clothing, a long coat and periwig, styles from decades past. As I approached, he faded, simply grew transparent, then vanished entirely. The telescope stood empty, but it was pointed at Orion. I had not positioned it there. The secondary telescope had been covered, not in use tonight. Yet someone had uncovered it, aimed it at specific stars, used it for observation. This has continued every clear night since. The figure appears at the secondary telescope, making observations, recording nothing, just looking, always focused on the same region of sky, the constellation Orion. I investigated the observatory's history, learned that the first astronomer here, Dr. John Flamsteed, he died 30 years ago. He spent decades mapping the stars, creating the first accurate star catalogue. His life's work. Orion was his favorite constellation. He observed it obsessively, measured every star within it, calculated their positions with painstaking accuracy. He died at this observatory, at his telescope. looking at Orion. His last words were coordinates, numbers marking a star's position. Now he returns, night after night, still observing, still measuring, still dedicated to his celestial work. I have learned to ignore his presence. He does not interfere with my observations. He simply conducts his own. Two astronomers working side by side, one living, one dead, both studying the eternal heavens. Last week, I tried speaking to him. I positioned myself near the secondary telescope, waited for him to appear. At midnight, he materialized. Bent to his eyepiece as always, I spoke softly, did not startle him, asked what he observed. He turned his head slightly, as if acknowledging my presence. Then he spoke. One word, a number, a coordinate in the night sky. Then he faded. I recorded the coordinate, aimed my telescope at that position, found a star I had not previously catalogued, a faint star, barely visible, but there. Dr. Flamsteed guided me to it. Even in death, he contributes to astronomy, still mapping the heavens, still finding what others miss. Dr. William Hartley, astronomer, Royal Observatory, Greenwich, 5th August, 1691. Archivist's note, Dr. Nathaniel Ashcroft. Historical records confirm Dr. John Flamsteed's tenure as first Astronomer Royal and his death 1719. His star catalogue remains foundational to astronomy. Observatory staff report no modern sightings, though building extensively renovated. Flamsteed's dedication to celestial observation well documented in his writings. End of file. Proceeding to next recovered document. Case file NOA1575C. Classification. Wine Merchant's Report. Date of statement 13th June 1575. Location Wine Vault, Southampton, England. Author Mr. Thomas Whitmore. Wine Merchant. Report on the wine that ages in reverse. I, Thomas Whitmore, Wine Merchant of Southampton, do report on an unusual situation in my vault. I store wines from across Europe. French clarets, Spanish sherries, Portuguese ports. The vault maintains perfect conditions. Cool temperature, no light, proper humidity. Wine ages beautifully here, growing richer and more complex over time. But one cask has gone wrong. I purchased it 6 months ago. A French claret from Bordeaux. Excellent vintage. I stored it in the vault to mature. Last month, I drew a sample to check its progress. The wine tasted young, too young, younger than when I purchased it, as if it had aged backward. I thought perhaps I had been sold inferior wine, that the merchant had lied about the vintage. But I drew another sample yesterday. The wine is even younger now, light and thin, barely any complexity, more like grape juice than wine, as if all the aging has been undone. I examined the cask carefully. No leak, no contamination. The seal remains intact, but the wine inside is transforming, growing younger rather than older. I have other casks from the same vineyard, same vintage. They age normally, growing richer each month. Only this one cask behaves strangely. Last night, I stayed in the vault, watching the cask, trying to understand what causes this. At midnight, I heard something. Liquid moving inside the cask, sloshing, as if being stirred, but nothing touched it. No one else present, just the cask, and the sound of wine moving within. I placed my hand on the wood. It was ice cold, colder than any cask should be, cold enough to hurt my palm. I pulled my hand back, The cold remained, spreading through the wood. Frost formed on the outside of the cask. In my temperature-controlled vault, frost, coating the wood. The liquid sounds grew louder, violent now, as if the wine was boiling inside, but cold, not hot. I stepped away, watched from a distance. The frost spread, covering the entire cask. Then it stopped. The sounds ceased. The cask sat silent, still covered in frost. This morning, I drew another sample. The wine is nearly clear now, almost no color left. It tastes like water, like the grapes were never pressed, like fermentation never occurred. The wine is disappearing, returning to nothing, being erased from time. I have sealed the vault room containing that cask. I will not enter again. Whatever causes this phenomenon, whatever makes wine age backward, I want no part of it. The cask can sit there, growing younger, turning to water, turning to nothing, until it disappears completely. Thomas Whitmore, wine merchant, Southampton, 13th June, 1575. Archivist's note, Dr. Nathaniel Ashcroft. No scientific basis for wine aging in reverse. Phenomenon suggests temporal anomaly or observer's misperception. Whitmore's business records end 1576. No subsequent owner documentation. Vault location demolished 1680s. Similar reports of time-reversed objects appear sporadically in folklore but lack verification. End of file. Case closed to public record. The original document remains sealed within the vaults of the British Museum. The NOA archive remains committed to documenting phenomena that defy conventional understanding. These cases are submitted for academic review and further investigation. Further access requires written authorization or curiosity strong enough to ignore the warnings. Until next time. These are the National Occult Archives.